It was just after midnight when the call came in. I remember because I'd just taken a sip from my lukewarm coffee, the kind that tastes like burnt cardboard but keeps your eyelids from sticking shut. The dispatch floor was quiet, aside from the soft hum of the computers and the occasional static crackle from one of the radios. Night shift has its own rhythm, slow, steady, almost hypnotic. You stop thinking about daylight after a while. The phone lit up, the tone cutting through the silence, and my hands moved on instinct. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. No fumbling, no hang-up click, just silence. I frowned, leaning closer to the headset mic. 911, can you hear me? A faint hiss filled the line, the soft, irregular sound of breathing. Not panicked, not gasping, just slow, in, out, like whoever was had the phone close to their face. Hello. If you can't speak, try tapping the phone. Once for yes, twice for no. No taps, just breathing. And something else. I pressed one hand against the headset, closing my eyes so I could listen better. Beneath the breathing, there was a steady rhythm, tick, tick, tick like a clock. I glanced at the call log. No location, no caller ID, just unknown. Are you in danger? I asked again. Silence. Then a breath that sounded closer, like the speaker had moved right up against the phone. I've had plenty of silent calls before. Pocket dials. People too scared to speak. Kids messing around. But this one felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Can you say something for me? Anything. Nothing. The ticking kept going. Slow. Patient. I muted my mic for a second and turned to Rena, the dispatcher in the next share over. Got a weird one on line 3. Breathing and some kind of clock in the background. She raised an eyebrow. Run a trace? Already trying. I glanced at the system window. The trace timer spun, but no result came up. It wasn't even failing. It was like it was waiting for something. I unmuted. Sir? Ma'am? If you can't talk, I'm sending help to your location. Still nothing. The ticking was in perfect time, each one spaced about a second apart. I found myself syncing my breathing to it without realizing. Tick in, tick out. I hate dead air. I'd rather someone scream at me than just listen. All right, I'm going to keep you on a line while I get someone to you. I flagged the call on the system as possible welfare check, but without a location, it was a shot in the dark. Rena rolled her chair closer, leaning in to listen to my headset. After a few seconds, she pulled back, her face tight. That's not a clock, she said quietly. I stared at her. What do you mean? It's ticking. Yeah, but it's off. It's not mechanical. More like, she stopped, shook her head. Never mind. The breathing changed. It was subtle, but I caught it. Before, it had been steady, like someone relaxed. Now it was shallower, quicker, almost excited. Who are you? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Nothing. I glanced back at the timer. 3 minutes on the line now. Whoever hadn't hung up, hadn't made a sound except for that breathing and the tick, tick, tick. You've reached emergency services. I tried again, keeping my tone calm. If you're hurt, we can send help. Just tell me where you are. There was a sound then. Not a word. Not a cry. Just a shift, like fabric against the phone, as though the caller had adjusted their grip. And then the breathing got closer again. Every dispatcher learns how to tell background noise from foreground noise. I knew that whatever I was hearing now, it wasn't in the background anymore. It was right there. I don't want to say it out loud, but the thought pressed in. It sounded like someone leaning over my shoulder. I glanced at the office door's glass pane. Nothing but the dim hallway outside. From minutes in, the trace window suddenly flickered. For a second, I thought we had a hit. But instead of coordinates or an address, a single word appeared in the location field. Near. I swallowed. Near where? I whispered under my breath. The ticking stopped. The silence hit harder than the sound had. I could still hear breathing, but without the ticking, it seemed too loud, too deliberate. Okay, I said slowly. I need you to... The ticking came back. Faster now. Rena shook her head and mouth hung up. I didn't. Instead, I leaned into the mic. If you're near, tell me what you see. A pause. Then, faint but clear, a whisper. Light. It was the first word. My heart jumped in my chest. You see a light? Is it a street light? A house? No answer. Can you tell me what color the light is? Silence. Then, yours. I felt the hairs rise on my arms. I looked around the dispatch center. My desk lamp was the only light in the room besides the computer monitors. "Are you in this building?" I asked, my voice barely steady. The breathing stopped. The line stayed open. I could hear the faint hiss of the connection, but no sound at all. Then, very slowly, the breathing returned, this time matching mine. Rena reached over and hit the secondary trace button on my console, but the system froze. Just a spinning wheel. "Kill the call," she said again. I tried. My finger hovered over the disconnect key. But then I heard it, just under the breathing. A voice, so faint it felt like it was inside my head rather than in my ears. "Don't." I froze. 5 minutes, 30 seconds. The whisper came again. "Don't hang up." It wasn't pleading. It was calm. "Sure." "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. "You'll miss it." I didn't want to know what it was. Every instinct screamed to end the call, log it, and move on. But I didn't. The ticking started again, faster now, almost frantic. And then, faint, under it, I heard another sound. Footsteps. Not through the headset. Not distant, but behind me. I whipped around. The hallway outside was empty. Rena saw my face and stood up. "I'm getting security." The footsteps in my headset got louder, closer, until they stopped. "Where are you?" I asked. My voice was shaking. The whisper came again, right in my ear. "Ear." The line went dead. I yanked off the headset, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Rena came back with one of the security guards, but of course there was no one there. No sign of anyone entering the building. We logged the call, filed it like any other. But here's the thing. Later, when I checked the recording in the system, the call wasn't there. The log showed my console idle the whole time. And sometimes, only when I'm alone on the floor at night, my headset clicks like a call connecting. And I hear it, breathing, and the slow, steady tick, tick, tick. I didn't expect the call to come back. It had been 3 nights since the ticking incident. I convinced myself it was a fluke, some late-night creep with a voice changer or a prankster who got lucky with the static and breathing. I told the story twice in the break room, half smiling like it was funny, even though it had left me rattled. But here's the thing about night shift. Once the room goes quiet and you're alone with your headset, your mind starts to fill in the gaps. It was 12:43 a.m. when the phone lit up again. Same thing, unknown in the ID field. My stomach dropped before I even answered. 911, what's your emergency? The line hissed. And then breathing. Not frantic, not quiet. The same slow, steady rhythm I remembered. I didn't move for a moment, my hand frozen on the desk. "This is emergency dispatch. Are you able to speak?" No answer. But I knew it was them. It's hard to explain, but there's a texture to certain silences. Some feel empty. Others feel like someone is in the quiet with you, leaning just close enough that you can almost feel their breath. I checked the trace window. Same spinning wheel as before. No location, no number. "You called here a few nights ago," I said. "What do you want?" A pause. Then, very softly, "Evan." I flinched. They'd said my name. It wasn't in the system. My name doesn't come up on the caller's end, and it's not listed anywhere except my ID badge, which I keep face down on the desk. I took a breath, forcing my voice steady. "How do you know my name?" The breathing stayed the same. Calm, patient. "Evan," they whispered again. It wasn't just the fact they knew it, it was how they said it. Like someone you've known for years, someone who's said it thousands of times. No hesitation, no question mark at the end. Just certainty. My eyes flicked to the far end of the dispatch floor. Rena wasn't on shift tonight. I was alone. I muted my mic for a second and tried pulling the internal call logs, seeing if maybe this was coming from another department line. But the system showed my station idle, no active call in progress. I unmuted. "If you know my name, then you must know where I am. If you need help, tell me where you are." The breathing got louder. Closer. I pushed my chair back a couple of inches, even though I knew it was just in my headset. "You need to tell me what's going on. Are you hurt?" "You're tired," the voice said. My throat went dry. "You should sleep." I wanted to rip the headset off. I didn't. Some part of me didn't want to give them the satisfaction. "Why are you calling here?" They didn't answer right away. Just that steady inhale, exhale, inhale. And then, "I used to sit where you are." My skin prickled. "You worked here." Silence. The ticking sound returned, faint at first, then clearer. Tick, tick, tick. I reached over and pulled up the old personnel database. The ticking reminded me of something, an old desk clock one of the veteran dispatchers had years ago. She'd kept it on the far end of the room. I hadn't thought about her in ages. Her name came to me slowly, Carolyn. She'd been here when I first started, and then she was gone. No one ever told me why. I glanced back at the headset. Who are you? No answer. I leaned closer, lower my voice. Are you Carolyn? The breathing stopped. Then, do you remember her last night? My mouth went dry. What do you mean? You were here. I shook my head instinctively, even though they couldn't see me. No, that was years ago. Time is wrong here, they whispered. I sat there, frozen, as the ticking grew faster. And then, just like before, the location field flickered on my screen. This time, instead of near, it said behind. I spun in my chair. The dispatch floor was empty. The glass door to the hallway showed nothing but shadows. I forced myself to turn back to the screen. Where are you calling from? You'll see, the voice said, almost playful. Then the line went dead. I logged the incident, though I kept most of the details to myself. I didn't want to deal with the jokes about ghosts and haunted phone lines. But later, when I was locking up, I passed the far corner of the room, the one where Carolyn's old desk had been. There was something sitting there, a small brass desk clock, ticking. I hadn't seen it before, and when I reached to touch it, the ticking stopped. After the second call, I tried to convince myself it was over. I told myself it was someone messing with me. Maybe a bored kid with a spoof number. Maybe some washed-up ex-dispatcher with too much time on their hands. The human brain will grab onto any explanation, no matter how thin, if it lets you sleep at night. But sleep didn't come easy. I kept thinking about the way they'd said my name. Not hesitant, not curious, just like they'd always known it. I thought about the ticking, the way it had sped up, and that one word on the trace screen, behind. By the time my next night's shift rolled around, my nerves were already frayed. It was 1:12 a.m. when it happened again. Unknown. I knew it was them before I even picked up. My pulse spiked, but my hand moved on its own. 911. What's your emergency? The line hissed. Breathing. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? For a few seconds, nothing. Then, softly. Do you remember me now? I try to keep my voice steady. No, and I don't want to. A low exhale. I'll tell you where I am. That was new. I clicked into the trace window. All right, go ahead. The voice paused, like it was enjoying the moment. It gave an address. I typed it in without thinking. It was a county road number and a mile marker. The map window blinked, loaded, and then nothing. Just a green field in the middle of nowhere. No structures. No roads beyond the one cutting through it. You gave me the wrong address, I said. It's the only address, they replied. I zoomed in. The field was bare. No houses, no barns, nothing but scrub grass and dirt. The aerial image showed no shadows, no signs of life. I can send someone to check, I said, more for my own comfort than theirs. You should come, the voice said. I leaned back in my chair. That's not how this works. You've been there before. My jaw tightened. No, I haven't. Yes, you have. You just don't remember. I glanced at the timestamp, 2 minutes into the call. My fingers hovered over the secondary trace, but I didn't press it yet. Why would I go to an empty field? I asked. The voice almost smiled when it answered. It wasn't empty then. Something about that lodged in my head like a splinter. I stared at the grainy map image. The pale line of the road. The flat stretch of nothing. I pulled up county records. No property listed. No previous structures. Just a piece of land owned by the state. I unmuted the mic. Who are you? You know me. I don't. You knew me the night she died. My chest tightened. Ooh. The ticking started again, slow and steady. You'll see. I hit the secondary trace. The screen flickered. For a moment, I thought I had them. But instead of coordinates, the location field filled with the same words as before. Behind you. I spun in my chair. Empty room. My hand was shaking when I turned back. If you keep calling, I'll have this traced. The voice ignored me. You won't find me on your maps. Then where are you? In the field. I checked the clock. 3 minutes, 50 seconds. I've been told once that anything beyond 5 minutes was statistically rare for silent or prank calls. Whoever this was, they wanted time. Why me? I asked. You were the last voice she heard. I gripped the edge of the desk. Ooh, the line hissed. The breathing got louder until it was the only thing I could hear. Then a whisper, Carolyn. My blood went cold. I wasn't even. I stopped myself. I didn't want to feed it, but the memory was there. I had been working the night Carolyn died. She'd gone out on a call, even though she wasn't field. She told us she was checking something herself. She never came back. The report said she'd been found in an open field, unresponsive. No wounds. No cause of death. Just gone. My headset felt heavy against my ears. What happened to her? The voice's tone didn't change. You'll see. The map window blinked again. For just a second, the aerial image wasn't a field anymore. I swear I saw a building, low, dark, and long, like an abandoned storage shed, and someone standing outside it. Then it was gone. You're lying, I said, though I didn't sound sure. The voice was barely audible. Come see me, Evan. And then the line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the map. Eventually, I pulled up the GPS on my phone. I typed in the address they'd given me. It didn't recognize it. I tried the coordinates from the map. Nothing but an error. But here's what I can't explain. When I closed my phone and looked at my screen again, the county map had changed. The empty field was gone. In its place was a single black dot, pulsing, and underneath, a label. Ew. The rest of that shift crawled. I couldn't stop looking at the map. Every few minutes, I'd tab back to it, half expecting the pulsing black dot to disappear or start moving. But it just sat there, beating like a slow heartbeat. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not yet. I didn't want to hear the jokes, the theories. I didn't want to give it to anyone else, like maybe it would spread if I said it out loud. The next day, after a night of staring at my bedroom ceiling instead of sleeping, I came back to the dispatch center early. The day shift was still there, the room alive with chatter and the click of keyboards. I went straight to records. Most dispatchers don't dig too deep into the archives unless they have to. They're not exactly organized for easy browsing. We're talking about decades of incident reports, call recordings, and handwritten notes stuffed into mismatched folders. It took me nearly an hour to find what I was looking for. I started with property searches, anything tied to the coordinates from the map. There was no address, no listing, but there was something else. A report from exactly 20 years ago. The header read, Unresolved Incident, Dispatch Call Number 2113. The name attached to it was familiar in a way that made my skin tighten. Dispatcher, Carolyn Ames. I read the summary twice. The call had come in at 1:14 a.m. from the exact same coordinates. No number, no registered address. Just open field, unoccupied. The notes were brief, caller silent for first 3 minutes. Faint ticking noise and breathing. Caller identified dispatcher by name. Address traced to location with no structures. Dispatcher requested to end shift early. There was nothing after that. No transcript. No follow-up report. But the timeline didn't make sense. The official record said Carolyn died 3 years after this call. Yet this incident was marked final entry in her personnel file. I went deeper, pulled up audio archives from the same date. I didn't expect to find anything. Half our old recordings have been corrupted or lost. But after a few dead searches, I found one. It wasn't labeled with her name. Just a date, time, and the words field call. I put on the headphones. The first thing I heard was static, then breathing. It was the same as mine, the same as both of my calls. 911, what's your emergency? Carolyn's voice, calm, professional, younger than I remembered, came through. Silence. I can hear you breathing. Are you hurt? She asked. Still nothing. Then faintly, Carolyn. I paused the playback, my skin crawling. When I hit play again, there was a low ticking sound. Slow. Who is this? She asked. A pause. Then, come see me. Where? The voice gave the same county road and mile marker I'd heard days ago. I heard Carolyn typing. There's nothing there. You've been there before, the voice said. I almost tore the headphones off. The recording went on for another minute. Then came a sound that didn't fit. Something like fabric rustling, a chair scraping across the floor. Carolyn's voice again, quieter now. Who are you? You'll see, the caller whispered. And then, clear as if they were right next to her mic, behind you. The headset on the recording hit the desk. There was the sound of her chair turning, and then nothing. No click, no disconnect tone, just open line. The recording ran for another 23 minutes. All I heard was faint wind, and far in the distance, a single clock ticking. I sat there long after it ended, the headset still pressing into my ears. I don't know what I expected to find. Proof it was a prank. Some flaw in the old tape that explained everything. But all I found was the same voice I'd heard twice now. The same rhythm of breath. I made a copy of the file and took it home on a flash drive. I didn't tell anyone. That night, I dreamed of a field. It wasn't empty. In the middle was a small, dark building with no windows. The grass around it was waist-high, unmoving. The air felt thick, hard to breathe. And there was a sound. Tick, tick, tick. I woke up just before sunrise, my heart hammering. I knew it was only a dream, but the smell of grass and cold air seemed to linger in my room. When I came into work the next night, the dot was still on the map, still pulsing. And around 1:14 a.m., the phone lit up. Unknown. I didn't answer right away. When I did, there was breathing. And then, Evan. I didn't speak. You've been there before, the voice said, just like on the tape. I closed my eyes. What's in the field? Silence. Then, Carolyn's waiting. The ticking started again. And I knew, sooner or later, I was going to see it for myself. I was halfway through my shift when the call came in. It had been one of those quiet nights where the hum of the air conditioning feels louder than the phone. A few false alarms, an elderly woman convinced someone was stealing her plants again, a drunk driver a county over. Nothing unusual. Then the light on my console blinked red. I slipped my headset back on, pressed the button, and said the same thing I always do. Steady, practiced, automatic. 911. What's your emergency? For a moment, nothing. Just dead air. I was about to repeat myself when a sound came through. Not words, breathing. Slow. Heavy. The kind of sound you only make when you're trying not to be heard. I straightened up in my chair. Hello? Can you hear me? The breathing didn't stop. If anything, it got closer, like whoever it was had moved the phone to their mouth. Sir? Ma'am? If you're in danger, say something. Or tap the phone. Anything. The voice that finally came was a man's, so quiet I almost missed it. They're in my crawl space. I didn't speak right away. Sometimes callers start with something strange because they're panicking. I had to make sure I heard him right. Someone's in your crawl space? Yes. The word was strained, like he was forcing air past a throat that didn't want to open. They've been there for hours. I can hear them moving. I pulled up the incident entry screen. Okay, sir, what's your address? There was a pause. Then he gave it to me. A rural road, far out in the county. I typed it in, sent the location to the nearest deputy, and kept him talking. Can you tell me what you heard? At first, he didn't answer. Then quietly dragging. The word made my stomach feel tight. What do you mean, dragging? He took a shaky breath. Like something heavy. Across the dirt. I tried to keep my voice calm. Okay. Are you alone in the house? Another pause. Yes. Are all your doors locked? Yes. I could hear a faint sound under his voice, something soft and irregular. I adjusted the volume. It was there, all right, just barely. A scrape, a slide, a pause. Then again, it wasn't coming from my end. I checked the call timer. He'd only been on the line for 2 minutes, but my palms were already damp. Sir, I want you to stay somewhere safe until officers arrive. Do not go near the crawl space. Where is it located? His reply came quick. Under the hallway. Hatched by the linen closet. The scraping sound grew louder in my headset, and I realized something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The noise wasn't random. It was moving. It was getting closer. Sir, I said slowly, where are you right now? In my bedroom. Doors locked. Good. Stay there. I tried to keep my voice even, but my eyes were on the dispatch board, watching the little icon that marked the deputy's car creeping along the county road. It was still miles away. The dragging sound kept coming, steady and slow. Then it stopped. I almost asked him if he still heard it, when I caught the next noise. A breath. Not his. It was long, slow, and wet, like whoever it belonged to was just inches from the phone. My throat went dry. Sir, is your phone on speaker? No. I hesitated. Where is it? In my hand. The breath came again. Louder. I didn't know if I was imagining it, but I swore I could hear the faint creak of wood, like weight shifting on beams. Sir, I said carefully, I think they might be right under you. I heard his breath hitch. I know. For a moment, we didn't speak. Just a faint, slow inhale-exhale of someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Then, suddenly, the dragging returned. Faster this time, almost frantic. What's happening? I asked. They're moving, he whispered. They're right under the bedroom now. My eyes flicked to the map again. The deputy was still minutes away. Too far. Okay. Sir, listen to me. I need you to stay calm. Is there a window you can get out of? He didn't answer right away. Then, I'm on a second floor. Second floor. No easy escape. The dragging stopped again. We both listened. Silence. Then, 3 sharp knocks. They came from somewhere below him, and they were so loud in my headset, I flinched. He whispered, "Oh, God." I opened my mouth to tell him to stay where he was, but the line filled with something else. Movement, scrambling, a muffled thump like someone hitting the underside of the floor. And then a voice. It was impossible to tell if it was male or female. It was low, hoarse, and almost sing-song. It said his name. I froze. Sir, I said quickly, did you hear that? But his voice was shaking. How did they know my name? I didn't have an answer. The sound below him shifted, and I could hear the hatch, wherever it was, being rattled. My dispatcher's training told me to keep him on the line, keep him calm, keep him safe. But my instincts were screaming that whatever was in that crawl space wasn't acting like a normal intruder. The rattling stopped. And then, nothing. It was so quiet that for a second, I thought the call had dropped. But the timer was still running. He was still there. I don't hear them anymore, he whispered. Don't assume they're gone. I told him. Stay where you are. The deputy is almost there. But before I could say anything else, the line filled with static. It wasn't the usual kind. This was deeper, harsher, like someone was breathing through it. And then, faintly, buried in the noise, came that dragging sound again. Only this time, it wasn't under the house. It was in the wall that I thought the call the night before had rattled me. I thought I'd already heard the worst of it. I was wrong. It came in just past 2 a.m., that dead space in the night when the phone should be quiet, when the air in the dispatch room feels too still, too heavy. The others were half distracted, talking about coffee runs and trying to stay awake. I was staring at the blank computer screen between calls, letting my eyes blur. Then the phone lit up. I answered with the usual greeting, my voice automatic. But his voice wasn't like last time. It was faster, more ragged. Almost like he'd been holding his breath until I picked up. She's right above me. I didn't even have time to confirm his name before he said it again. She's right above me. She's moving. I can hear her. The way he whispered, not frantic, but thin, like every word was forcing its way through a throat too tight to speak, made my stomach tighten. Sir, I need you to tell me your address, I said, trying to keep my tone even. We can send someone to help. It's the same, he breathed. Same as last night. The crawl space. She's here again. I think she knows you're listening. I motioned to my supervisor to start a trace while keeping the line open. That dragging sound was back. Slow, deliberate. The same one I'd heard the night before. Heavy cloth against wood, or maybe fingers across dust. It pulsed in the silence between his words. Sir, listen to me, I said. You need to stay on the line. Keep talking to me. I can't, he whispered. She'll hear. She's above me. I glanced at the CAD system. The address populated, and my frown deepened. The house was a single-story, small, maybe 800 square feet. No attic listed on the property file. No second floor. No above. Sir, are you sure she's above you? This property. Don't tell me where I live, he snapped, sudden and sharp, before dropping back into that breathy panic. You think I don't know my own house? She's crawling. I can hear it. I can feel the dust coming down. A short, sharp gasp cut him off. Then I heard it too. Not just dragging now. A faint thump, shuffle thump, like knees or elbows pressing into wood, moving in bursts. I signaled again to my supervisor. She mouthed, units en route. Sir, you need to get somewhere safe. Is there a lock on the crawl space? Silence. Sir. The sound above him stopped. For 3 full seconds, neither of us spoke. I thought maybe the line had dropped, but then his voice came back, thinner than before. She stopped. The hair on my arms lifted. Okay, that's good. That means you can. She's not moving, he cut in. She's listening. I think she's right over my head. Something creaked on the line. I swear I could hear his heartbeat in the pause before he spoke again. She's smiling. I swallowed hard. Sir, how do you know that? She's smiling because I can't go anywhere. My eyes flicked to the ETA on the responding units, still several minutes out. You're going to be okay, I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. Just then, faint and muffled, I heard a sound that wasn't his. A breath. But it wasn't like normal breathing. It was slow, almost mechanical, as though someone was deliberately letting the air out between their teeth. And it was coming from above the phone's mic. Sir, can you move somewhere else in the house? I said, trying not to let my voice shake. No, he whispered, voice breaking now. She's moving again. Oh God, she's moving. The dragging resumed, but faster this time. Not a careful crawl, more like something excited. I could hear him shifting, probably trying to press himself into a corner. He started whispering something over and over, but it was too soft for me to make out. What are you saying? I asked. He inhaled sharply, then finally said it clearly. She's not in the crawl space anymore. Before I could respond, the line went dead. The responding officers found the front door unlocked. The house was small, just like the record showed. The crawl space was there, but empty. Not even footprints in the dust. And the man? Gone. No signs of a struggle. No signs of forced entry or exit. Just the phone lying on the floor in the living room. The cord twisted, so tight it looked like someone had wrung it. When they told me, I didn't say anything. I just stared at the CAD screen, at that impossible detail. I couldn't make sense of no attic, no upper floor. Nowhere for her to be. That night, after my shift, I drove home in silence. I kept catching myself looking at my own ceiling while I tried to sleep. Every little creak made me stop breathing, because I kept thinking, if there's no above in a house, where does something like that really come from? I was ready to hang up. After the last call from that address, the one that didn't exist, I told myself I was done. I'd done my part. I'd filed the report. I'd even told the night's supervisor, though she didn't bother to look up from her crossword. But when the phone lit up again, when I saw those numbers flash across the screen, I froze. It was the same caller ID, same street, same number, same impossible house. I picked up without thinking. 911, what's your? She's right above me, he whispered, cutting me off. That voice. The same man. Same breathless panic, like he'd been whispering for hours without stopping. I wanted to tell him that I'd already checked. There was no attic, no crawl space, nothing above him but roof beams and shingles. But before I could say anything, something else came through. It was faint under his voice. At first, I thought it was static. But static doesn't shape itself into words. And this was shaping. She's right above me, the second voice said. Higher. Raspier. Like someone had inhaled smoke for years and was speaking through raw, burned vocal cords. It didn't overlap him. It followed him. A perfect half-second delay. My skin went cold. Sir, I started, but he spoke again, cutting me off. She's moving, he whispered. She's moving, the other voice repeated. Only this time, the delay was shorter. Almost in sync. Like it was catching up. I pressed the headset harder against my ear. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have wanted to hear it better, but my mind couldn't let it go. Who else is there with you? I asked. Silence. Not a clean silence, just a faint sound of breath. One set shallow and fast, the other too slow. When a man spoke again, his words tumbled out so fast he could barely breathe. She's crawling over the beams. Don't hang up, don't hang up. And again, that rasp behind him. She's crawling over the beams. Don't hang up, don't hang up. I didn't know what to say. Every protocol in my head just slipped. Sir, I need to know if... A loud creak interrupted me. The kind you hear in old houses when the wood shifts under weight. But it wasn't coming from his end alone. I could hear it in the room around me. It was so faint that I thought I imagined it. Just a trick of my ears from having the volume up too high. That's what I told myself. But then it happened again. A groan of wood above me. So soft, it was almost polite. Sir, you're sure you're in your home right now? I asked. My voice shook despite me. Yes, he said, and the rasp said it too, in the same breath. My eyes drifted to the ceiling of the dispatch room. It's a single-story building. No attic, just ventilation ducts and insulation. Still, I found myself leaning back in my chair, looking up like a fool, holding my breath. The man started whispering faster. She's looking down now. Oh, God, she's... And the echo wasn't delayed anymore. It was exact, perfectly timed. Two voices, one ragged and wet, the other just terrified, saying the same thing together. I slammed the mute button and spun in my chair, waving at Marcy, who was logging burglary calls at the far desk. "Patch me to the sheriff's line," I said, keeping my voice low. "What, right now?" she asked. "Yes, now." She frowned, but I didn't wait. I unmuted. "Sir, the police are on their way. I need you to..." The voices stopped. Not just his voice. Both. The line wasn't dead. There was still the faint hum of an open connection, but no breathing, no movement, nothing. "Sir." A click, like someone shifting the phone against their cheek. Then, in a rasping voice alone, "You sound different." I froze. That voice, it wasn't repeating anymore. It was talking directly to me. "What do you mean?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Not like him," it whispered, "but like the last one." My blood ran cold. The last one. 20 years. The man's voice came back suddenly, over top of it, desperate and breaking. "They know you. They know." And then, the line went dead. I stared at the phone. Marcy asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I wasn't. When the deputies got there, they found nothing. Just an empty house. Single story. No attic. Dust everywhere, like no one had lived there for years. I didn't tell them about the second voice, or that it spoke to me. I didn't tell them that when I finally took off my headset, I still heard a faint breath in my left ear. The T started just like the first call. Same soft crackle. Same tight breathing. Same tension in the air that made my skin tighten before the words even came. "She's right above me." That voice, Bill's voice, was already familiar in a way I didn't want it to be. I'd heard him the night before, whispering about dragging sounds in his crawl space. I told myself I wouldn't get too invested, that I'd log the call, send officers, and move on. But I hadn't been able to stop thinking about it all day. And now, here he was again. I said his name. "Bill? It's me. The same dispatcher from last night. What's going on?" There was a pause. The line hummed like there was something between us, not just distance, but weight. She's moving again," he whispered. "Who?" A soft sound followed, like a faint thump, and then a slow scrape. The noise didn't come from my headset speakers. At least, it didn't feel like it. It felt like it came from above me in the room. My hand went cold around the mic. "I told you she's above me," Bill said. "Bill, we checked the address last night. You live in a one-story home. There's no attic." Silence. Then, that's what I thought too. That's when I heard it, barely at first. A breath. Not his breath. Not the steady panic of a man hiding. It was lighter, wetter, and higher. A woman's breath, somewhere close to the receiver. "Bill, is someone else in the room with you?" His whisper came again, but layered, because right after each word left his mouth, another voice spoke them back. She's... The second voice rasped about half a second late. "Bill, Bill." It repeated, the syllables catching like someone used to saying them. I tried to steady my voice. "There's someone else there. Can you get outside?" "No," he whispered. "No," the other voice echoed, slightly garbled. I closed my eyes for a moment. "Bill, you need to move away from..." Then he said in one quick rush, "She's looking at me." "She's looking at me," came the higher rasp, dragging the last word out until it scratched against the earpiece. I muted the line, my thumb trembling over the button, and signaled to my supervisor. "I mouthed, trace this now." He nodded. I clicked back in. "Bill, listen to me. We're sending help. Keep talking to me, okay?" The breathing grew louder, but only from one of them. Hers. Long, uneven pulls of air that made my own chest tighten. "What is she doing?" I asked. "She's smiling." "She's smiling." The mimicry wasn't perfect. It never was. Her voice clipped certain consonants, as if her mouth didn't quite work the same way ours did. But the tone matched him exactly. I didn't want to ask the next question, but I had to. "Bill, what does she look like?" There was a creak in the background, with straining under weight. Then, She's wearing my wife's face. She's wearing my wife's face. I almost dropped the headset. My supervisor glanced at me sharply, but I kept my voice as calm as I could. Bill, your wife's not. She's been dead 3 years. The second voice said nothing that time. Just breathed. From the corner of my eye, I saw the trace results come in. My supervisor's brows pulled tight. He mouthed something to me. Same location. That wasn't possible. It was the same address as last night. Same single-story house. Same no attic report from the responding officers. But then my supervisor's expression shifted from confusion to something else. Worry. He typed something on his screen, then looked at me like he wasn't sure whether to tell me. I didn't press. Not yet. Back on the line, Bill said, "She's moving again. She's coming down. She's coming down." The sound changed. Less scraping, more thumping. Slow, deliberate thumps like knees or elbows hitting the floor one at a time. "Bill, get out of the house," I said firmly. "Bill," she whispered back. I heard a soft laugh from her. High, almost playful, but without any real joy in it. I thought about telling him to hang up, to run, without warning her. But something in me didn't want to lose the connection. Like if the line went dead, he would too. Then there was a sharp knock, 3 times, right next to the phone on his end. I flinched, my headphones pressing tighter against my ears from the movement. "She's here," he breathed. "She's here." And then, for the first time, her voice spoke first. "Do you hear me?" The question was meant for me. It felt like my throat closed. I didn't answer. Static cracked through the line, louder than before. Somewhere in it, beneath the distortion, I swore I heard the sound of my own voice, faint and looping back at me. When it cleared, Bill was crying quietly, not sobbing, just a low, broken sound between breaths. I asked, "Bill, where is she now?" He didn't answer. Neither did she. For a few seconds, the line was nothing but the sound of both of them breathing together. Then the call ended. I sat there, frozen, headset still against my ear long after the disconnect tone had played. My supervisor finally walked over, placing a slip of paper in front of me. It was the trace record. Same address. Same name. But under previous calls, there was a date from 20 years ago. And a note. Caller reported someone in crawl space. Dispatcher went missing 2 days later. The missing dispatcher's name was the same as mine that I'd been on shift for maybe 2 hours when the call came in. It was one of those quiet nights where the room felt bigger than it was, the hum of the fluorescent lights louder than any of us wanted to admit. Dispatch work can be slow like that. Long stretches of nothing, broken by moments that feel like your whole chest is caving in. The line clicked, and at first I thought no one was there. Just a faint static. I almost did the usual script. 911, what's your emergency? Again, when I heard it. A whisper. Not the kind people use when they're trying to be quiet. This was softer, fragile, like the voice was barely strong enough to push out the words. "HLO." It was a kid. I sat up straighter in my chair. My hand went to the keyboard automatically. "Hey there, buddy," I said, keeping my voice light. "Can you tell me your name?" Silence. Then barely audible. "Ethan." "Okay, Ethan," I said, fingers hovering over the keys. "Can you tell me what's wrong?" Another pause. A shaky breath. And then, "Someone's hiding under my bed." It wasn't the first time I'd gotten a call from a scared kid. Usually, it's a nightmare, or they're home alone and the house is making noises. But something in Ethan's voice, it didn't sound like a bad dream. It sounded like he was trying not to cry. But if he did, he thought something bad might happen. I kept my tone calm. "Where are your parents right now, Ethan?" "They're downstairs," he whispered, "watching TV. But I can't yell. I think he'll hear me." My stomach tightened. "Who will hear you?" "The man," Ethan breathed. "Under my bed." I glanced at the clock. Midnight. My partner on the next desk overcaught my expression, raised an eyebrow. I covered the receiver and mouthed, "Kid, bedman." She sat up too. "All right, Ethan. I want you to stay on the phone with me. Okay? I'm going to send some police officers to your house. Can you tell me your address?" He told me. His voice wavered on the numbers like he wasn't sure if he should be speaking at all. I typed it in, related to the responding units. "You're doing really well, Ethan," I said. "Can you tell me what the man looks like?" I could hear his breathing now, fast, shallow. I can't see him all the way. but I saw his hand. When I woke up, his hand was holding my blanket. I felt a chill creep up my arms. Is he still holding it? No, but he's still there. I can hear him. Can you tell me what he's doing? Ethan's whisper got even smaller. Breathing. Something about the way he said it. It wasn't just breathing, it was breathing like he's not supposed to be here. A slow, steady inhale, exhale like the man under his bed had all the time in the world. Okay, I said, keeping my own voice level, even as my pulse started to climb. Ethan, the police are on their way. You're not alone, all right? I'm right here. Can you stay on the bed for me? No, he said quickly. If I move, he'll know I'm awake. Then don't move, I told him. Just stay still. Tell me what you hear. We sat in that strange silence, broken only by the faint hiss of a line. And then I heard it too. Not clearly, but enough to make me freeze. A muffled, deliberate breath. Not Ethan's. It was too slow, too deep, and it was close. My coworker's eyes widened when I gave a tiny shake of my head. I hadn't turned the call to speaker, but the look on my face must have said enough. Ethan, I whispered now too, like we were sharing a secret. How long has he been there? I woke up maybe an hour ago, he said. I thought it was my brother at first, but my brother's not here tonight. Where is he? At Grandma's. He's not coming back till Sunday. The words hit me like a weight. This wasn't a sibling messing around. Ethan, do you know how the man got in? His answer came so fast it made my skin crawl. No, but I think he's been here before. Why do you think that? Another pause. Then, in that same fragile whisper, because he knows my name, my mouth went dry. I glanced at the little clock in the corner of my screen. Officer should have been 3 minutes out. Ethan, I said carefully. How do you know he knows your name? He said it. Ethan breathed. When I was almost asleep, he was saying it real slow, over and over, like he was practicing. The air in my lungs felt heavy. I kept my voice calm for him, but my heart was hammering. You're doing great, buddy. Can you tell me what he's doing right now? Ethan didn't answer right away. And then, so softly I almost missed it, he's closer. My knuckles whitened around the phone. Is he coming out from under the bed? No, Ethan said, but his hand is back. It's holding my blanket again. I pressed the mic button and spoke to the responding unit. Advise approach with caution. Possible intruder in child's bedroom, possibly armed. The officer's voice came back. Copy. 2 minutes. Ethan, I said, the police are almost there. Can you see your bedroom door? Yes. Is it locked? No. That answer twisted something in my gut. Okay, don't try to get up now. I don't want you to move unless you have to. Just stay really still and keep whispering to me. I could hear it clearer now, the man's breathing. Low, measured, and then a faint sound like fabric sliding. The blanket moving. Ethan, I said quietly. He's holding it tighter, the boy whispered. Like he doesn't want me to leave. My coworker was already signaling to the supervisor. Everyone's eyes were on me. The line felt thinner now. Like if it broke, something terrible would happen. 1 more minute, Ethan, I told him. Can you tell me if he's saying anything? Silence. Ethan, the boy's voice cracked. He just said, you can't stop me. I could barely hear my own breathing over the pounding in my ears. The radio crackled in my headset. Officers were on scene. I told Ethan, okay, the police are here now. They're coming inside. You're safe. There was a sound from him then, like relief but also fear. What if he hears them? That's okay, I said. They're going to take care of it. I stayed on the line while I heard the officers calling out downstairs. Ethan's parents shouted back in confusion. I told them they're almost there. And then I heard it. A sudden, sharp creak would bending under weight. Not from beneath Ethan, from a floor beside him. Ethan, I whispered. He's not under the bed anymore. Ethan breathed. He's standing up. I shot a look at the clock. The officers should have been at the bedroom door. But before they got there, the line filled with a new sound. Footsteps. Slow. Crossing the floor. And then nothing. The phone stayed live. I heard the bedroom door burst open. Heard the officers' voices, the mother's frantic cries, the rustle of movement. But Ethan wasn't speaking anymore. When they confirmed he was safe, I finally let go of the breath I'd been holding. But something still stuck in my chest, something I couldn't shake even after the call was over. The officers never found anyone else in the room. No signs of forced entry. No footprints on the floor. No one under the bed. And yet, I know what I heard. That breathing wasn't in my head, that I had been staring at the clock for maybe 2 minutes when the phone lit up again. Same line. Same kid. My stomach tightened before I even picked it up. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause. Not the nervous kind. More like he was thinking about how to start. And then that small, shaky voice came through. It's still here. I didn't even have to ask who it was. That voice, it was burned into my head from earlier tonight. Is this... You're the boy who called earlier, right? The one who said there's someone under your bed? Yes. I glanced at my notes from before, half a page of scribbles with his first name and address. Miles, 8 years old. Mother works nights. No father in the picture. A babysitter was supposed to be there. What's your name again? Miles, I asked, even though I knew. Yes. There was a small rustling sound on his end, like he was moving the phone around. Then, in a quieter voice, almost a whisper, he's copying me. The hairs on my arms stood up. What do you mean, Miles? When I talk, he says it too. I swallowed. The man under your bed? Yes. I said hello, and he said hello. I told him to go away, and he said go away. I started writing, my pen barely keeping up. My voice stayed even. Is he still under the bed right now? Yes. How do you know he's still there? A pause. Then, because I just said what you said, and now he said it too. And then I heard it. Faint. So faint I almost thought it was static. But it wasn't static. There was a second voice right after Miles spoke, higher, strained, like someone forcing their words through a cracked throat. Miles, I said carefully, I need you to put the phone as close to the bed as you can without getting too close yourself, okay? He didn't answer right away. Just small shuffling noises, a slow creak of floorboards. I pictured his tiny hand holding that phone, lowering it down toward the dark space beneath him. And then in that muffled, breathless way that made my heart crawl in my throat, I heard it. Not from the phone, not from Miles, from somewhere just under him. Hello. It was the exact same pitch as Miles' hello earlier, but wrong. Too stretched out, too empty at the end, like the voice was trying to remember how to sound human. I sat back, my pen frozen in my hand. Miles, I said, keeping my tone calm, is there a grown-up in the house with you right now? No, he said softly. The no echoed back almost instantly, warping into something like a sigh. I tapped the dispatch channel with my other hand, muting my line to him for a second. Unit 12, this is dispatch. I need immediate response to 42 Baker Street. Child at home alone. Possible intruder in the bedroom. Static crackle back. Unit 12 en route. ETA, 5 minutes. I went back to Miles. Okay, buddy, the police are on their way. I want you to stay on the phone with me until they get there, all right? Yes. Yes. That time, the second voice was louder. Closer. Miles, I said slowly, I want you to get off the bed right now and go into another room. Can you do that for me? There was a whisper so faint I almost missed it. I can't. Why not? The silence stretched too long before he finally said, he's holding my foot. I felt my mouth go dry. Miles, listen to me. I need you to pull your foot away, get off the bed, and run to the door. You can do that. I can't, he said again. And then, right after, the echo, raspier this time, almost mocking, I can't. That voice wasn't just repeating him. It was learning him. The first words I heard from it were flat, like a bad recording. But now, it was catching the same rhythm, the same tiny quiver in his tone. Miles, keep talking to me, okay? I said. I needed him to stay focused, not freeze. I asked him what he wants. Miles said in a rush. And he said what I said, but then he didn't stop. He kept going. He cut off. The silence that followed was sharp, brittle. What did he say, Miles? His voice came back smaller, like he was turning his face away from the phone. He said, I'm not under your bed. I swear my breath just stopped. The air in the dispatch room felt heavier. Where did he say he is? Miles didn't answer. Miles. Then, so quiet I had to hold the phone tighter to my ear. He said he's behind me. My pulse thudded in my ears. Okay, listen to me very carefully. I want you to run, Miles. Right now. Don't look back. Go to the door. Go outside if you can. There was a rustle, like sheets moving, a small thud, footsteps. And then, in a voice so close to the phone I could hear every grain of it. "I'm not Miles." It was his voice. Perfect. And then the line went dead. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the phone like I could will it to ring again. My other hand had already switched to the radio. "Unit 12? Child may be in immediate danger. Do not wait for backup." "Copy," came the reply. Every second between my words and their arrival felt like a mile. I kept imagining that little room, the bed, the space underneath, the shadows at the edge of his vision. That thing crawling closer every time he spoke. The part that kept replaying in my head wasn't even what it said. It was how quickly it learned. How its voice grew smoother, fuller, like it was pulling pieces of him into itself. 5 minutes later, Unit 12 called back. "Dispatch, scene secure. No sign of intruder. Boy is, shaken but unharmed. We're sweeping the house." My grip on the pen loosened. "Copy that. Bring him in if you think." The radio crackled again. "Dispatch, you're not going to believe this, but the bed's too low for anyone to fit under. And there's no dust, no disturbance under there at all." I just stared at the radio, because in my mind, I could still hear it. Miles' voice, folding in on itself until it wasn't his anymore. "That I've done hundreds of calls. Some stick with you for a few days. Some never leave." That kid's voice from the night before, quiet, uneven, whispering about the man under his bed, had been looping in my head all morning. Dispatchers aren't supposed to get attached to a single call. We take them, we pass the details to officers, we move on. But I couldn't. Not with this one. Maybe it was because I'd heard his breathing. Maybe it was because I'd heard that other voice, the one copying him. Maybe it was because the line went dead before I could tell him help was coming. I came in for the next shift with the hope that there'd be some kind of follow-up report waiting. There wasn't. No note from the responding unit. No confirmation they even made contact with anyone. Just a strange, vague log in the system. Call unfounded. I didn't like that word. It's what they put down when they can't verify the incident happened at all. I asked around. One of the night officers, Dean, was pouring burnt coffee into a paper cup when I caught him. "Hey, the call from last night, the kid?" I asked. "Did you guys check it out?" He frowned like he was trying to remember. "Oh yeah, that one. Weird thing. We went to the address the system traced, but what?" He glanced over his shoulder, lowered his voice. "Nobody lives there. Hasn't for years." I waited for him to say more. He didn't. Just sipped his coffee like that was the end of it. My stomach twisted. "You mean like the house is empty?" "Vacant." Dean shook his head. "No, I mean it's falling apart. Boarded windows. Rusted gate. Place is dead. Neighbors said it's been like that since the last owner passed away. We didn't find any footprints, nothing fresh. Definitely no kid." He said it casually, like this was just another false alarm. But I couldn't let it go, because I talked to him. I heard his little voice. I heard him whispering to me, scared and shaking. I heard him tell me about the man under the bed. And I heard the man too. "How's that possible?" I asked. Dean shrugged. "Bad trace maybe. Could have been a prank. But that didn't make sense either. Our trace system doesn't just guess. And if it was a prank, it was a damn convincing one." The rest of my shift, my eyes kept drifting to the log entry. Unfounded. The word kept looking wrong. Not false. Not mistaken. Just incomplete. By the time midnight rolled around, I had worked myself into a state. So when my supervisor stepped out for a smoke, I did something I wasn't supposed to do. I pulled up the CAD system, brought up the location trace again, and copied down the coordinates. The map brought me to the far edge of town, an area I'd only ever seen once, years ago, when I got lost driving. The streets out there were narrow and broken, lined with trees that looked too tall for the town. Even in daylight, the place felt dim. I told myself I wasn't going there, that I just wanted to see the map, get some closure, and move on. But half an hour later, I was in my car, the screen on my phone lighting up the empty road ahead. It was 1:12 a.m. The closer I got, the fewer streetlights there were. The pavement cracked, then turned to gravel. My GPS showed only one more turn, but there was no sign. Just a narrow dirt road choked with weeds. I slowed to a crawl, headlights catching the silver glint of something in the brush, old chain-link fence. Part of it was bent, just enough for a person to slip through. The house was exactly like Dean described. 2 stories, but the top windows were shattered. Wood boards nailed unevenly over the lower ones. The front door sagged on its hinges. Everything about it leaned, like the whole thing was tired of standing. I killed the engine. For a moment, the only sound was my own breathing. It was cold out here, but not the normal kind of cold. The air felt still, thick, like the world had stopped moving the moment I turned onto that road. I should have left. I knew I should have left. Instead, I stepped out, gravel crunching under my shoes. Up close, I saw something I hadn't expected. The boards on one of the windows weren't weathered like the others. They were newer. Fresh nails, clean wood. Like someone had fixed it recently. I walked up the porch, each step groaning under my weight. The front door was ajar, just enough to see the black inside. I don't know why I whispered it. Hello. Maybe because part of me was hoping I'd hear a kid's voice answer. But the house didn't answer. Not at first. And then, tap. It came from inside. Slow. Sharp. Like something touching the floor in an even rhythm. I froze, my hand tightening around my phone. Another tap, this time followed by the faintest shift of weight, like someone moving slowly in the dark. I leaned toward the gap in the door, phone flashlight trembling in my grip. The beam caught dust motes, an overturned chair, wallpaper peeling in long strips. And then something else. On the floor, near the base of the staircase, I saw a small shape. Round. A ball. The kind kids play with. It rolled, just slightly, as if nudged by an unseen hand. That's when I heard it. A voice. High-pitched. Soft. Hello. My skin prickled. It wasn't coming from the stairs. It wasn't even coming from inside the house. It was coming from my phone. I lowered the flashlight, looked at the screen. No incoming call. No open line. But through the speaker, clear as anything, came the same voice I'd heard last night. Are you still there? My thumb hovered over the power button, but I couldn't press it. The kid's tone changed, dropping to a whisper. He's here. That's when another voice joined in. Low, hoarse, scraping like dry leaves. It repeated the boy's words, matching the pace exactly. He's here. I backed down the porch, heart pounding so hard I could feel in my fingertips. I didn't hang up. I didn't end the call, if you could even call it that. I just kept walking backwards until my heel hit the gravel. The boy spoke again. This isn't my house. The other voice followed. This isn't my house. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just turned, climbed into my car, and slammed the locks down. The phone was still in my hand, still playing their voices in perfect, awful unison. This isn't my house. This isn't my house. I threw it into the passenger seat and started the engine. Headlights lit up the boards, the sagging door, the bent fence. I didn't look back when I pulled away. It took me 20 minutes to get back to the main road. When I finally stopped at a gas station, I picked up the phone. The call, or whatever it was gone. No record of my history. No audio file. Nothing. But the coordinates were still in my notes. And something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That I'd like to tell you that I handled it like a professional. That after hearing the trace come back to an abandoned property, I calmly passed the information on, sat back, and waited for the police to do their job. But that's not how it went. I couldn't shake the boy's voice. Even after the line had gone dead, I could still hear it in my head, that small, uneven whisper that kept catching on the edge of fear. And underneath it, the sound of him being echoed, word for word. The police were already on their way when I left the dispatch desk. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just grabbed my jacket, muttered something about needing air, and slipped out into the parking lot. It wasn't the smartest thing to do. I've told myself that every day since. But the truth is, by then, I needed to see it for myself. I needed to know why a little boy's voice could make the hair on the back of my neck stand up like that. The drive was short, 10 minutes, maybe 12. But every street I turned on felt emptier than the last. The streetlights here didn't hum. They just flickered like they were struggling to stay awake. The asphalt was cracked in spiderweb patterns, weeds breaking through like veins under skin. While I pulled up, I recognized the house immediately. It wasn't just abandoned. It was rotting. The siding was gray, peeled in long curling strips. Half the porch had collapsed in on itself, and the front door leaned like it had been hit from the inside. There was no car in the driveway, no lights in the windows, No sound at all except the occasional groan of old wood shifting in the wind. The squad cars were already there. 2 of them. Their lights weren't flashing, just parked with the engines running low. One of the officers recognized me. "Dispatch? You shouldn't be here." I told him I just wanted to see if the boy was all right. He didn't answer, just looked at me for a moment like he was deciding whether to bother sending me away. Then he sighed and said, "Stay back. We're about to go inside." The front door didn't open so much as it surrendered. One push, and it scraped along the warped floor, letting out a sound that made my teeth ache. Inside, God, the smell hit first. Damp and stale, like wet fabric that had been left to mold. Underneath that, something faintly sour like dust and time, and something else I didn't want to name. The hallway was narrow, with wallpaper that had peeled in long, curling sheets. Every step we took kicked up dust that floated in the flashlight beams. We went room by room. Empty, empty, empty. But then we reached the last door at the end of the hall. It was small, with a faded sticker of a cartoon rocket peeling off near the bottom. The wood was lighter than the rest of the doors, like it had once been painted white, but time had stripped most of it away. The officer in front of me turned the knob slowly. The door opened, and I felt my stomach drop. It was a child's room, or at least it had been. The wallpaper was pale blue, with little clouds painted along the top, but it was faded and yellowed now. The bed was small, the kind with a wooden frame and guardrails. The mattress had no sheets, just dark stains spreading out from the middle. A bookshelf stood in the corner, its shelves warped and bowing under the weight of dust. What few toys remained were warped, cracked, plastic that had gone brittle with age. A stuffed bear slumped forward on the top shelf, one glass eye missing, its fur the color of old teeth. And in the middle of the room, on the floor, was a tape recorder. It was small, rectangular, with buttons so worn the labels were gone. A thin layer of dust clung to it, except for one clean spot where someone's hand had pressed the play button. And it was still playing. We all stood there listening. It was the boy's voice. The exact same voice I had heard over the phone. The same inflection, the same pauses. He was whispering. "Someone's under my bed." Then, a second voice. Same words, same tone, but heavier, slower. Like the boy's whisper had been copied imperfectly, each syllable just a fraction off. The 2 voices continued, the boy speaking, the other repeating, just like on the call. My throat went dry. One of the officers bent down and switched it off. The room went silent in an instant, and somehow that was worse. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the lead officer said, "Place is empty. No kid. This recorder was all we found." They started talking about bagging it for evidence, about how maybe someone had used it to lure in calls as a prank. But I wasn't listening. I was looking at the bed. There was something about the way the dust was disturbed underneath it. Like the rest of the room had been untouched for years, but there, just under the guardrail, the dust was thinner. I took a step forward before I even realized I was moving. The lead officer noticed. "Don't." I knelt down and looked under the bed. It was dark, not pitch black. The flashlight beam reached far enough to see the floorboards. But the space under there looked deeper than it should have been. Like the shadows had weight. There was nothing there. No shoes, no boxes, no boy. And yet, I felt certain that if I stayed there long enough, I'd see something shift in that darkness. I stood up quickly. My knees felt unsteady. The officers kept working, checking the closet, photographing the walls. I stayed by the door, my eyes fixed on that space under the bed. When we finally stepped back outside, the air felt sharper, colder. I thought I'd feel better once we left the house, but I didn't. If anything, the silence of the street felt worse now, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. The lead officer told me they'd follow up with the property records, see who owned the house, maybe track down the last tenants. I nodded, but it all sounded far away. I kept thinking about the tape. I didn't tell them this, but on the call, the boy had said something right before the line went dead. I didn't mention it in my report. I don't even know why. Maybe because it didn't make sense. He'd said, "He sounds just like me." But it's not me. That had been enough to make my skin crawl when I first heard it. But now, standing outside that rotting house, I realized something. The boy on the tape hadn't been breathing the same way as the echo. The breaths were off. Like the second voice, didn't actually need to breathe at all. I drove home that night, with the radio off. The roads were empty. The sky was heavy with clouds. And every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I half expected to see the back seat occupied. I thought about the dust under the bed and how some spaces stay empty for a reason. They never found the boy, at least not the right one, because a week later, another call came in. Different address, different town, and a different voice, higher pitched, more frantic, but the same words. Someone's under my bed, and behind it, that same slow, heavy echo that I've been a dispatcher for 7 years. In that time, I've learned that most emergencies are messy. People panic. They talk over you. They forget details. Sometimes they hang up mid-sentence. But they're never perfect. Real calls aren't perfect. That night, the call was perfect. Too perfect. It came in a little after 2 in the morning. My shift was quiet. The usual low hum of computers, the occasional crackle of a radio. I'd been nursing a stale cup of coffee, watching the screen's idle glow when the line lit up. I slipped on the headset, pressed the button. 911, what's your emergency? The voice was male, mid-30s, maybe, calm but urgent. There's a fire at 214 Ridgeway. The basement's full of smoke. My wife's still down there. The way he said it, not screaming, not crying, it was like every syllable had been weighed, measured, perfectly placed. Sir, I need you to stay calm, I said, pulling up the address on my system. Get to a safe place. Do you see flames? Yes, coming from the far wall. The shells are catching. She's still down there. I typed the details as he spoke. His pauses were exactly long enough for me to keep pace. His breathing, steady, even almost metronomic, didn't change once. Help is on the way, I told him. Can you try to reach your wife? I can't. The stairs are blocked. Please hurry. The please hurry came right at the moment I'd expected. Like a script, I brushed the thought aside. Sirens were already being dispatched. I heard the faint wail through the line before the call ended. Not cut, not hung up, just ended. Dead air, then the click of disconnect. I didn't think much of it. Calls in weird all the time. People drop their phones, get pulled away. I logged it, moved on. 15 minutes later, the line lit again. Same number. I picked up. 911, what's your emergency? There's a fire at 214 Ridgeway. The basement's full of smoke. My wife's still down there. I froze. It wasn't just the same voice. It was the same sentence. Same tone. Same exact pauses. Word for word. For a second, I thought maybe the first call had somehow looped. Some glitch in the system. But that doesn't happen. The system doesn't replay calls. Sir, is this? I started, but he kept going. Yes, coming from the far wall. The shells are catching. She's still down there. Exactly the same inflection. Exactly the same order. A cold pinprick spread through my chest. I checked the system. The call was live. The timer was ticking. This wasn't a recording. My voice caught. Who am I speaking to? No change. No acknowledgement. Just, I can't. The stairs are blocked. Please hurry. I felt my hand clench around the pen. I didn't write anything this time. I just listened. Again, I heard the faint sirens in the background. Then the same click. By now, the first set of units had already reached Ridgeway. I radioed them. Unit 4 to 1. Confirm fire at 214 Ridgeway. The reply came after a pause. Negative. No fire here. Place is dark, locked up tight. Looks vacant. That made the hairs on my neck stand up. Vacant? I opened the property record. The house had been foreclosed 5 years ago. Nobody lived there. I told the officer about the call. I could hear him walking through the property over the radio. Floorboards creaking. Muffled echoes. Basement's empty. No smoke. No sign anyone's been here in years. He said that like he was trying to convince himself. When the line went dead, I just sat there, staring at the call log. 2 identical calls, 15 minutes apart from the same number, which, when I ran it, came back as unlisted. No subscriber information. That should have been impossible. Even blocked numbers leave some kind of trail in our system. This one didn't. I tried to focus on other things. Took another noise complaint. Helped a drunk college kid find his way home. But every few minutes, my eyes would flick to that number in the log, and I'd feel that same strange tightening in my chest. It wasn't just that it repeated. It was how perfect it was. Real emergencies, they stumble. People gasp, curse, misremember. But it was like hearing the same scene, acted out by the same actor, exactly the same way. Just before 3, the line lit again. Same number. My mouth went dry. I answered anyway. 911. What's your emergency? There's a fire. At 214 Ridgeway. The basement's full of smoke. My wife's still down there. It was the 3rd time I'd heard it, but it still made my skin prickle. This time, I didn't interrupt. I just held the headset tight against my ear, listening to him deliver the same flawless performance. Yes, coming from the far wall. The shells are catching. She's still down there. Every pause was in the same place. Every breath, the same length. Even the faint sound of sirens in the distance was identical, like it had been stitched into the background. And then something new. Just after, please hurry, I heard a faint scraping, like something being dragged across concrete. It wasn't in the first 2 calls. The line clicked off before I could say anything. I radioed Unit 4 to 1 again. Any movement at Ridgeway? The officer hesitated. We checked again. Still nothing. But, we thought we heard something in the basement. Might have been a raccoon. It didn't sound like he believed that. By now, my chest felt tight. I could taste the metallic edge of anxiety at the back of my throat. I've had prank calls before. I've had creeps call in fake emergencies just to mess with us. But this wasn't like that. Prank calls always slip. They laugh, or they mess up their story. This was precise. Too precise. When the 4th call came in, same number, same script, I let it go to another dispatcher. I sat there, just listening from my console. He got the exact same thing I had. Same man. Same words. Same breaths. When the click came, we both just stared at each other across the dim room. What the hell is that? He asked. I didn't have an answer. Around 4 a.m., Ridgeway was checked a final time. Nothing. No fire. No people. Just an old, abandoned house with peeling paint and boarded windows. But in my headset, even hours later, I could still hear his voice. Measured. Calm. Perfect. I didn't log out right away at the end of my shift. I sat there a long time, watching the call records on my screen. Every 15 minutes, like clockwork, the same number, the same call. The last one came in at 5:15, right as the morning shift walked in. I didn't pick up. Nobody did. It rang exactly 30 seconds before the system stopped it. Later, when I pulled the recordings for review, I played them back to back. They lined up perfectly, not just in what he said, but in how he said it. Every tiny background noise was in the exact same place. Even the scrape I heard on the 3rd call was there, but when I listened closely, it wasn't a scrape. It was a voice. Faint. Low. Almost under the range of hearing. Repeating him. I didn't sleep after the 1st call. Not because it shook me. Calls like that happen more often than you'd think, but because something about it wouldn't leave my head. It was the way the man's voice cracked when he said the word burning. Not just fear. It was resignation. Like someone who'd been living inside the fire long before it started. 15 minutes after we dispatched Engine 7, the same call came in. Word for word. Same panic. Same words. Same crack in his voice. I told myself it was a recording glitch. Dispatch systems aren't perfect. Sometimes the phone line hiccups, or a repeat packet of data gets pushed through. But when I replayed it, the timestamps weren't identical. They were 2 separate calls, and I knew that wasn't possible. Captain Reeves called in on the radio after the 2nd run. His voice was calm, like it always was. The guy's been in the service 30 years. Nothing rattles him. Except this time, there was a pause before he spoke. Dispatch. We're on scene again. That word, again, made my stomach turn. I pressed the transmit button. Copy that. Engine 7. You mean the same address? Affirmative. His voice sounded heavier than before. Same house. Same situation. I didn't answer right away. I glanced at the other dispatcher, Miller, but she was pretending to type something. I could tell she didn't want to look at me. Finally, I asked, Captain, what do you mean by same situation? Another long pause. It's the same fire. I didn't understand at first. You mean it rekindled? No, he said. I mean nothing's changed. It's exactly how it was when we got here the first time. The radio cracked, and in the faint static I thought I heard something. Screams. Not from Reeves, but somewhere in the background. They were identical to the screams from the first call. The first run to the address had been fast. Engine 7 is based only a few blocks from the old Hendricks property, a 3-story farmhouse that's been falling apart for years. The 911 call came in, and in minutes Reeves' crew was on scene. They'd reported heavy fire in the upper floors, possible entrapment, a man yelling for help from the back porch. The kind of thing that gets everyone's adrenaline pumping. But now he was telling me they were there again, and it was still burning exactly as before. I tried to keep my voice steady. Captain, confirm. You've put water on it twice? Negative, he said. We haven't even deployed lines this time. I think you should send someone else out here. Someone from PD, maybe. Miller was staring at me now. Her face was pale. We didn't send police to a working fire. Ever. That wasn't protocol. What's the situation with the occupants? I asked. There was another burst of static. Then Reeves said, it's the same man. I didn't get it. The caller. Yeah, he's still on the porch. Still yelling. Still exactly the same as before. Same words. Same tone. His voice dropped lower. Like it's replaying. We'd logged the first call at 2:11 a.m. The second came in at 2:26. In that time, Engine 7 had made a full run, assessed the scene, started suppression, and radioed in progress. I'd heard Reeves giving orders the first time. I'd heard the chaos of hoses dragging, men shouting, the fire roaring. It was real, and yet, now they were back at the start. I patched Reeves through to my headset so the rest of the center couldn't hear. Captain, I need you to describe exactly what you're seeing. He took a breath. The fire's in the same windows. Same intensity. The man on the porch, he's wearing the same shirt, the same jeans. He's standing in the same exact spot. Okay, I said. My fingers were shaking over the keyboard. And when you first arrived, did you pull him off the porch? Yes. His voice was flat. We dragged him away. He was unconscious. Medics took him. I froze. And where is he now? He didn't answer. Captain. He exhaled sharply. On the porch. The thing is, firefighters don't sound scared. Not the good ones. But there was something in his voice now. A tightness. A strain, like he was trying to keep his own head from spiraling. Are you saying it's the same man? I asked. I'm saying it is the man. Down to every detail. He hesitated. And I don't think he sees us. What do you mean? He's yelling for help, but it's not to us. It's like he's yelling to someone else entirely. Through the radio, I could hear the faint shouts in the background. And as Reeves said it, I realized he was right. The man's eyes weren't on them. He was looking past them. I checked the logs again. The medics from the first run had taken the patient to St. Luke's Hospital. If this was really the same man, then he should have been halfway across town by now. I called the ER nurse's line. She sounded confused. Yeah, we've got him. Came in about 20 minutes ago. Smoke inhalation, mild burns. He's sleeping now. What? I hung up without answering. Miller mouthed at me. What the hell's going on? I didn't know. Back on the line, Reeves said, Dispatch, I think we're pulling out. I sat up straighter. You're abandoning the scene? No one's inside. And if this is whatever this is, I'm not keeping my guys here. His voice cracked on that last word. I never heard Reeves' voice crack before. Before I could answer, there was a sound in my earpiece. Not static this time. It was the scream from the call. Only, it wasn't coming from the porch anymore. It was in my headset. I pulled it off like it burned me, but the sound was still there, faint like it was coming from inside the walls. I pressed the mic. Captain, do you copy? Nothing. Engine 7, do you copy? Still nothing. Then Reeves' voice came back, too calm. Dispatch, we're en route back to station. That was it. No explanation. No chatter from the other firefighters. Just his voice, steady, almost rehearsed. I logged them as clear, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When they came back in later that night, Reeves didn't talk to anyone. He walked straight past my desk without looking at me. The rest of the crew avoided eye contact. Only one guy, Torres, lingered at the coffee machine. I asked him what happened out there. He didn't look up. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. He stirred his coffee. It wasn't just the man. It was all of it. The fire, the porch, the smell. It was the same. He glanced up at me, and his eyes were red, like he hadn't blinked in hours. And when we left the second time, I swear I saw him still there, even as we drove away, just stuck. After they left, I replayed the recordings. Both calls were exactly 15 minutes apart. Exactly the same words. Exactly the same sounds in the background. Only one difference. In the second call, after the man screamed for help, there was a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. It said my name. It was the ticking that made me notice. Or rather, the absence of it. Every night in the dispatch center had its own soundtrack. The quiet hum of the computers, the low murmur of distant voices, the faint tapping of keyboards, and somewhere underneath all of it, the soft, constant ticking of the big wall clock over my station. It was something I never paid attention to until it was gone. I glanced up without even thinking about it, my eyes finding the clock the way you might look at a window when you feel a draft. 3:07 a.m. I remember it exactly. The hand were frozen there. Not just the second hand. Either everything was still. I frowned. That clock was battery-powered. It stopped before, sure, but it always twitched, even when it was dying. This was different. It wasn't dead. It was holding its breath. I pushed my chair back and went to check. The face looked the same as always, white with black numbers, but there was something about the stillness that felt wrong. Like the silence was heavier than it should be. When I touched the glass, it was cold. Too cold. I stepped back and looked around the room. That's when I noticed the others. Every clock in the room, the one over the door, the one by the break area, even the little digital one on the far desk, they all said the same thing. 3:07. The same time. The same stillness. I laughed a little too loudly. Well, that's weird, I muttered to myself. I checked my watch. 3:07. I tapped the glass. Nothing. The thing is, if I had stopped there, I might have just chalked it up to some electrical glitch, maybe even a prank. But then the phone rang. Not the recorded emergency line beep. Not the usual two-tone chime. Just a single, sharp ring. It was the sound the old landlines used to make. The kind that echoed in your bones. I picked up, instinct kicking in before reason had a chance to stop me. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. Not even static. I was about to hang up when I heard breathing. It was slow, deep, not panicked, controlled. Hello? I asked. The breathing stopped. Then a voice whispered, it's still 3:07. I froze. My hand tightened around the receiver. Who is this? I asked, trying to keep my tone even. The line went dead. I put the phone down slowly. My pulse was pounding now. I looked at the clock again. Still 3:07. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe the clocks had stopped at the same time the call came in. Maybe it was some elaborate prank. But then I heard voices. They were faint at first, coming from the far side of the room, near the captain's desk. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like two people talking, low and hurried. I stepped closer. The voices didn't get louder. They stayed distant, like they were coming from another room entirely. When I reached the captain's desk, I saw it. The radio was on. The light was green, but no one was touching it. I leaned down and pressed the speaker button. That's when I realized the voices weren't talking. They were screaming. Muffled, but panicked. And they were the same screams I'd heard from the fire call earlier that night. The one that had repeated. The same pitch. The same breaths. The same awful, hi, cracking sound at the end. It wasn't playing from a recording. The voices were live. I stepped back, my skin crawling. The captain wasn't here tonight. The desk was empty. The radio cut out on its own. Silence again. I went back to my station, trying not to look at the clocks. Try not to think about how every single one still said 3:07. I told myself I just needed to check the system logs. Maybe the call had looped again. Maybe the radio had accidentally pulled an old feed. But when I pulled up the logs, the timestamp on the last call was 3:07 a.m. Not just the last call. Every call in the system from tonight had the same time. Even the ones I'd answered hours ago. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling my throat go dry. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, careful, coming from the hallway that led to the break room. I turned in my chair, my mouth opening to call out, but the hallway was empty. The sound kept coming, not echoing, not fading, just steady, as if the person was always the same distance away, no matter how far they should have walked. I stood, more out of instinct than bravery, and took a step toward the hallway. The second my foot crossed the threshold, the sound stopped. I looked down the hall. The light above the break room door was flickering. I walked toward it, my shoes squeaking against the tile. When I reached the break room, I saw the coffee pot was still half full. I'd made it at midnight. It should have been cold by now, but steam was still curling from the surface. The microwave clock said 3:07. So did the one on the fridge. I turned to leave, but there was someone standing in the doorway. I didn't see their face, just the outline. They were tall, too tall to be anyone on night shift. They didn't move. I blinked, and they were gone. I stood there for a long moment, trying to steady my breathing. My hand was shaking when I finally walked back to the main room. The phones were all ringing. Every single one. The sound was deafening, overlapping, filling the air like a swarm of insects. I grabbed the nearest one. 911, what's your emergency? The same words came back, my own voice, saying, 911, what's your emergency? I dropped the phone. Another one kept ringing. I picked it up, same thing. My voice, my tone, my words. It didn't matter which phone I answered. They all play me back at myself. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, but the thought of stepping outside into whatever night this was, whatever time this was worse. So I sat down. I closed my eyes. I told myself it would pass, that maybe I'd blink and the clock would move again. But when I opened my eyes, it was still 3:07. And in the reflection on my dark monitor, I could see someone standing behind me. Not moving, not breathing, just watching. I've been sitting in this chair so long that my body stopped aching. That's how I knew something was wrong. It wasn't the fatigue anymore. It was the absence of it. My back should hurt. My eyes should burn. My fingers should be stiff from typing and pushing the same buttons over and over. But they weren't. My body felt suspended. The computer screen glowed the same pale blue. The phone still hummed with the faint static I'd gotten used to, like white noise. And the wall clock, still frozen at 3:07 a.m., wasn't even a surprise anymore. I just didn't remember the moment when I stopped questioning it. The first time I thought about leaving, I laughed to myself. It was ridiculous. Of course I could leave. My shift ends at 6 o'clock. I just wait for my relief, grab my bag, and drive home. Easy. Except, my relief never came. And it's not like anyone told me, stay put. Nobody locked the doors. I just didn't move. Like my body decided it was safer to sit here than to get up and check. The calls kept coming in. Same time, same order. First the fire on South Rigby. Then the domestic disturbance on Maple. Then the single-car rollover on I-49. And then the quiet 30 seconds of no calls before the fire on South Rigby started again. At first, I thought it was déjà vu. Then, maybe a glitch in the system. Now I know it's a loop. It's subtle at first. The first fire call sounded normal. Well, as normal as someone screaming that their house is burning down can sound. But every time it repeated, little details shifted. The man's voice got deeper. Or maybe raspier. The urgency stayed, but the tone, I don't know. It wasn't panic anymore. It was something closer to glee. The first time he screamed, "It's in the walls," I thought he meant the fire. But on the 7th loop, I realized he never mentioned flames. Not once. He just kept shouting about it. And when I asked what it was, there was this pause, like he wasn't sure if he should tell me. By the 9th time, he whispered it. Not into the phone, though. More like into my ear. The domestic disturbance call is worse. The woman's voice is frantic in the first few loops. She says her husband is trying to break down the bedroom door. I hear pounding in the background. Classic high-priority call. But on loop 5, the pounding slowed down. On loop 6, it stopped completely. And then there was breathing, slow, deliberate, almost matching mine. On loop 7, she whispered, "He's in here with me now." I didn't hear anything after that except a soft clicking sound, like fingernails tapping the receiver. By loop 10, the woman wasn't screaming anymore. She was laughing. I've tried writing down the calls. Dates, times, names, but they never stay the same on paper. I'd swear I wrote South Rigby yesterday, but now the note says South Ripme. The rollover on I-49 becomes I'm 49. Sometimes I find notes I don't remember writing. Phrases like "don't answer at this time" or "stop saying hello." But I always answer, and I always say hello. I thought about just not picking up, letting the calls go to the recording system, or letting them ring out completely. But when I tried, the ringing didn't stop. It just got louder. Louder until it felt like my teeth were vibrating in my skull. I answered just to make it stop. The voice on the other end didn't even follow the script that time. It just said, "There you are." Sometimes, between loops, I get the urge to stand up and check the hallway. Once I actually did. The hallway lights were on, but everything looked too still. The air felt heavier, like walking through water. I tried to find the exit, but the hallway just kept turning in on itself. Every time I reached a corner, I ended up back at the dispatch room door. When I finally went back in, my headset was still warm, like I'd never left. The small changes are starting to feel personal. On the 5th loop tonight, if you can even call it a night anymore, when the caller said my name. Not ma'am or dispatcher, but my name. I never give it out. Ever. When I asked how they knew it, the line went dead. On the next loop, 3 different callers all said my name in passing, like they'd known me for years. By loop 8, one of them was correcting me. "That's not what you said last time, Megan." I didn't remember saying anything different, but the way he said it made me think he was right. The other dispatcher, Casey, hasn't spoken to me in I don't know how many loops. At first, she was here, answering calls on the other side of the room. She'd crack nervous jokes or roll her eyes at how weird it was that we were getting the same reports over and over. But then she just stopped talking. Now, she's still there, still answering calls, but I don't hear her voice anymore. Not through the headset, not even in the room. Just silence, her lips moving, her pen scratching notes I can't read from here. I thought about walking over to her desk, but I haven't yet. Something tells me I shouldn't. I've lost track of how many times it's happened. 15 loops? 20? More? The clocks never move. My body never changes. But in my head, I feel older. More worn down. Like the hours are still passing in some part of me, just not here. My coffee cup is always half full. Always warm. I've tried pouring it out, but the moment I set it down, it's back where it was. Same level. Same steam curling off the surface. Sometimes I think I'm still drinking it, but I just can't feel it anymore. The worst part is, I'm starting to remember things from loops I haven't lived yet, like little flashes. In the next loop, the man in the fire call is going to say something new. In the next loop, the woman in the domestic disturbance is going to stop laughing. In the next loop, Casey is going to finally look at me. I don't want her to. I'm afraid of what her eyes will look like. Right now, I'm between loops. The fire call is about to start again. I know it. I can feel it, like a storm building before the first thunderclap. Sometimes I wonder if I could break it by answering differently, by saying nothing, or by screaming into the receiver before they speak. But what if that just makes it worse? I think about the note, "Don't answer it this time." I think about the other note, "Stop saying hello." But when the line connects, I always do. I always say it. 911, what's your emergency? The phone's ringing again. And I know, without a doubt, it's the start of the loop. Except, something's different this time. It's not one line ringing. It's all of them. Every single one, flashing red. And the sound isn't a normal ring anymore. It's deeper, slower, almost like a heartbeat. I put my hand on the receiver, but I don't lift it. Across the room, Casey stops writing. Her head turns toward me, slow and stiff. And for the first time in, God, I don't know how long, her eyes meet mine. She smiles. The phones stop ringing. And then, one by one, they start again. I don't think this loop is going to end. I don't think any of them will. But the calls are getting closer. I was halfway through my 3rd cup of coffee when the line lit up. It was quiet before that. That strange, hollow kind of quiet you only get in the dead of night, when the air feels thicker and the hum of the computer starts to sound like breathing. I answer the way I always do. Name, department. What's your emergency? But I didn't even finish the sentence before I heard him. The man wasn't just yelling. He was screaming like something had torn through his front door and was standing right in front of him. They're outside. Oh God, they're outside. His voice was raw, shaking so hard the words almost didn't make sense. I try to ground him the way we're trained to. Keep your tone calm, low, steady, like you're telling a kid to take a deep breath. Sir, I need you to slow down. Who's outside? The lights went out, he said, and his voice cracked like he'd just realized it. The whole road. Power's gone. I looked out the window and he stopped. I could hear his breath hitched in his throat. What did you see? I asked. Shadows, he said. Just that one word. But he said it like he was confessing to something, like admitting it out loud made it more real. I almost asked if he meant people, but he kept going. They're moving. but there's nothing to cast them. No car lights, no moon, nothing. Just black shapes sliding across the yard. I didn't say anything for a second. Not because I believed him, but because of the way he said it. He didn't sound drunk. He didn't sound high. He sounded certain. I typed the address into the system. County Line Road. The far end, where the farmland starts to get patchy, houses sitting too far apart to see each other. There's not much out there except cornfields, dirt, and a few lonely power poles. All right, I've got your location. Are you alone in the house? Yes. God, they're closer. I heard the phone scrape as he moved, then his voice went muffled. They're at the porch. I can hear them on the wood. What do they sound like? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, like someone dragging their hand across it. Slow. My brain automatically tried to find a simple answer. Could have been raccoons. Maybe a drunk neighbor. But then I remembered. He said the lights went out. Whole road. And if there's no light source, how the hell do you see a shadow? Okay, listen to me, I said. Lock every door. Stay away from the windows. Help is on the way. I already locked them, he whispered. It doesn't matter. They're not normal. The line crackled. Just a quick burst of static, but enough to make me pull the receiver from my ear for a second. I thought it was interference until I heard him again, voice even quieter. They're looking for me. I felt something sink in my stomach. How do you know that? I don't know, he said. I just do. I was about to ask him another question when the sound hit the line. Not from him. This was something else. A faint, dragging noise, like someone slowly pulling a heavy piece of cloth across the microphone. It didn't match anything I'd ever heard come through a call before. Sir, are you still there? Yes, he breathed. They're trying the door. In the background, there was a creak, soft, deliberate, like weight shifting on old wood. I told him to move to an interior room, to put as many walls as he could between himself and the sound. I could hear his footsteps, quick but careful, and the faint groan of floorboards. Then something strange happened. The noise on the porch stopped. I don't hear them anymore, he whispered. I was about to tell him not to let his guard down when another sound came through, this time from inside the house. A soft, rhythmic tapping, somewhere behind him. Where is that? I asked. I don't know, he said. His voice cut out for half a second. Then, lower, it's in the kitchen. He was whispering now, and I found myself lowering my own voice without thinking. Do you have anything to defend yourself? There was a pause. A knife. But what? It's not going to help. The way he said it, it wasn't defeat. It was like he knew something I didn't. Like he'd already seen the end of this. I could hear the tapping getting louder. Faster. Sir, I need you to get to the safest spot you can. Police are on their way. Just keep talking to me, all right? He didn't answer right away. I could hear his breathing, slow, shaky, like he was trying not to make a sound. Then, in a voice so low I could barely hear it, I think they're already in here. Before I could respond, there was a loud crash. The line filled with a kind of rushing noise like wind in a tunnel. I thought we'd lost him, but then his voice came through again, panicked now. They're everywhere. The phone dropped. I could hear it clatter against the floor. Then footsteps, fast, frantic. Sir, I yelled into the headset. But the only reply was that dragging noise again. Closer this time. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe 20 seconds, maybe a full minute, but then the line went dead. I sat there for a moment, just staring at the call-ended message on my screen. My shift supervisor was already asking what happened. I gave her the address, told her what I could. The nearest deputies were still 10 minutes out. When they got there, the house was empty. No signs of forced entry. No footprints in the yard. But they did find something. Every clock in the man's house had stopped at the exact same time, 2:14 a.m. The official report would say, caller possibly experiencing a mental health crisis. But I can still hear his voice shaking through the line. I can still hear the scraping on the porch. And I still can't explain the static or that strange cloth-dragging sound that came from nowhere. That was the first night the lights went out on County Line Road. It wasn't the last that I've heard quiet before. Real quiet. Like those middle-of-the-night hours in winter when the snow outside eats up every sound, and the only thing you can hear is your own breath. But what I heard on that line, it wasn't quiet. It was something else. The man on the other end, Mark, he'd said his name was was still talking, his voice coming in these sharp, panicked bursts. But between his words, between every gasp and stutter, there was nothing. Not the hum of a fridge, not the creak of the house settling, not even the distant hiss of wind through trees. It was absence, like the line itself dropped into a hole every time he stopped speaking. "Mark, I need you to stay calm," I told him, because that's what I'm trained to say. But even to me, my voice sounded strange, too loud, like it was the only thing that existed in the world at that moment. "They're still out there," he whispered. There was a pause, and then nothing. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I forced myself to speak again. "Who's out there, Mark?" No answer. I looked at my console. The call was still connected. The timer was still ticking. But all I got was dead air. Not even static, just nothing. Then suddenly, "They're not moving right. Shadows don't move like that." The hairs on my arms stood up. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You said your power went out?" "Yeah," he breathed. "Everything went black. I thought it was just the storm. But no wind, no rain, nothing." I lit a candle, went to check the breaker box, and that's when I saw them. "Mark, are they people?" A sharp inhale. "No." And then silence again. But this time, it felt heavier, like something was filling the space between us. I checked my headset, jiggled the cord. Still connected. I could hear him breathing faintly, only when he exhaled, but nothing else. "Mark, I want you to describe them," I said, my voice soft now. When he spoke again, it sounded like he'd leaned closer to the phone. His voice was so low, I almost missed it. "They look like people, but they don't match. It's like watching someone walk through water, but there's no water. They keep bending wrong." Every instinct in me wanted to hang up, but dispatchers don't hang up. We stay with them. "Where are they now?" I asked. Another pause. Then, closer. The word came out clipped, like he'd bitten off halfway through. And again, nothing after. It was starting to feel like the silence was alive. I could almost imagine it creeping into the line, curling around my voice, swallowing a hole before it could reach him. "Mark, do you have any weapons? Can you lock your doors?" I waited. My eyes flicked up at the big wall clock above the dispatch room. 3:14 a.m. "They already tried the doors," he finally said. "Didn't rattle. Didn't knock. Just stood there. Then they slid away." "Slid," I repeated, my stomach tightening. "Like their feet don't matter. Like the floor isn't there." The phone line went dead silent again. Not no sound silent. More like sound wasn't possible. And then, faintly, so faint I almost thought it was my imagination, something else came through. Not his breathing, not his voice. Something lower. A scrape. It didn't sound like metal or wood. It sounded like something soft and wet being dragged across the ground. "Mark?" I asked quickly, my hand tightening around my pen. He didn't respond at first. When he did, his voice was shaking. "That's them. They're back." I felt my pulse climb. "Are you in a safe room? Somewhere they can't see you?" He let out a trembling laugh that chilled me more than anything else he'd said. "They can see me no matter where I go." My skin prickled. "What do you mean by that?" They looked through the dark. Before I could respond, there was a loud pop in my headset, like a blown speaker, and then the line was nothing but that unnatural silence again. Except no, it wasn't silent. Something was in there. I leaned closer, straining to catch it. And I swear to God, Salah, I heard whispering. Not words, not even language. Just this breathy, layered sound, like a dozen voices trying to push their way through a wall at the same time. I froze. I couldn't even think for a moment. Then all at once, Mark's voice came back. Loud, panicked, almost screaming. "They're inside." I shot up from my chair, my headset cord snapping tight. "Mark, listen to me. Get somewhere safe right now." "No," he yelled. "You don't understand. Safe isn't." The rest cut out. Not like the line dropped. More like the sound itself just stopped existing. I stood there, breathing into the void, waiting for him to come back. And then, the whispering grew louder. I knew something was wrong the moment I picked up the call. It wasn't his voice this time. It was the way he breathed. Short, uneven, like every inhale cost him something. And behind it, nothing. No crickets. No wind. No hum of appliances. That silence from before, the one that felt like the world had been hollowed out, was still there. "County Dispatch," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "Sir, are you safe?" He didn't answer right away. I heard him swallow, the soft click of his dry throat. And then, "It's inside." My hand froze over the keyboard. "Sir, what do you mean inside?" "The shadow." His voice cracked halfway through the word. "It's not outside anymore. It's standing in the room with me." Something cold crawled up the back of my neck. I've been doing this job long enough to know when someone was seeing something real and when they were seeing something in their head. And whatever this man was seeing, it was real to him. Real enough that he whispered, like speaking too loud might make it move. I asked him where he was in the house. "Living room." I was by the window. I thought. His breath hitched. I thought it was still out there. But it's not. It's between me and the front door. I could picture it, clear as if I was there. A small, dimly lit room. Furniture casting long, stretched shapes on the floor, and one of them not belonging to anything in the room. "What does it look like?" I asked before I could stop myself. He hesitated. "It doesn't look like anything. Not like a person. Just black. Blacker than black. Like where it's standing, there's nothing at all." I could hear something in his voice, a kind of raw confusion. Like part of him was still trying to convince himself it wasn't real. I told him to move away, to get somewhere safe, but he cut me off. "I can't move." That when I realized he wasn't whispering just to be quiet. He was whispering because his voice had gone weak. There was a thin thread of panic in it now. It's facing me," he said. "It's not moving, but I can feel it. Like it's waiting for me to try." I kept my tone calm. "Do you have anything in the room? A weapon, flashlight, anything?" He didn't answer right away, and I could hear his breathing quicken. I can't tell if it's closer now." "I'm not." His voice shook. "I think it moved." "Did it move?" I blinked and, "God, I think it's closer." I opened my mouth to speak, but he kept going, voice getting sharper with fear. "It's right there. Just standing. But I can feel it pressing against me, like the air's thicker, like it's heavier now." I felt my own chest tighten, and for a moment, I almost forgot I was supposed to be the calm one. The dispatcher. The anchor. I told him to focus on my voice. I asked him to tell me what else he could hear, what else was in the room with him. Anything to keep him talking. "There's nothing," he said. "No sound. No night sounds. It's like I'm not even in my house anymore. Like the air's dead. Dead air." The phrase hit me in a way I didn't like. I tried to get him to move again, even just a step, but then, "It's between me and the door," he said. "If I move, I'll have to pass it." The image in my head got worse. Not just a shadow in a room, but a shadow standing exactly where you have to go to escape. The kind of thing that turns your body to stone. I told him there might be another way out. "Back door, window, anything." His voice went small. "It sits in front of all of them." That didn't make sense. "What do you mean?" He was quiet for so long, I thought the call had dropped. But then, I can see it. Every door, every window, I could see it standing there. All at once, a chill ran through me, slow and deep. I wanted to tell him he was just scared, that his mind was playing tricks, but there was a certainty in his voice. And something about the way he said it, like it wasn't even surprising to him, made me believe him. "Sir, listen to me," I said, my own voice getting tight. "You need to keep your eyes on it. Whatever happens, don't let it. It's gone." My fingers stopped over the keyboard. "Gone." He sounded lost. "It's not in front of me anymore." I didn't know if that was good or bad. Before I could say anything else, he spoke again, this time in a tone I'd never forget. "It's behind me." I don't remember breathing after that. I told him to run, to get anywhere, but the line went quiet. I could still hear his breathing, shallow and fast, but there was something else now. Something faint, a kind of low, dragging sound like cloth sliding over the floor. He whispered, "I can feel it." "What does it feel like?" I asked. "Like it's leaning over me. Like it's looking down, even though it doesn't have a face." Every hair on my body stood on end. I wanted to scream at him to move, to fight, but I knew, somehow, that if he turned around, it would be worse. Then, out of nowhere, the sound on the line changed. That impossible silence broke, but not with anything normal. It was like a deep, slow inhale. Not his. The call dropped. No click. No static. Just gone. I sat there, staring at the screen, my headset suddenly feeling too heavy. I tried calling him back. Over and over. The number didn't even ring. It was like it had never existed. I checked the logs, the incoming call history. There was nothing. No record. No number. Just a blank space where his call should have been. But I know what I heard. I know there was a man on the other end of that line. And I know he wasn't alone, that I didn't want to answer the call. Not after what happened in the last one. But you don't get to pick and dispatch. The board lights up. You take it. Only this time, there was nothing. No screaming. No breathless panic. Just the open hum of the line, a kind of faint, brittle hiss that reminded me of static before a storm. I stayed quiet for a few seconds, thinking maybe I'd get one of those delayed starts, someone fumbling with the phone or finding their voice. But after what felt like too long, I said, 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. Only that hiss. It was the exact sound I'd heard 3 hours earlier when a man from County Line called, whispering about the lights going out. The same strange absence between his words, the same hollow quiet that didn't sound like a phone line at all. I glanced at the call board. This number wasn't the same as his, at least not exactly, but the prefix was identical. Same area, same stretch of road. The last time we spoke, he'd said the shadow was inside, between him and the door. And then, the memory tightened my throat. He didn't hang up. He didn't scream. He just stopped. When I flagged the location to send units before, it was supposed to be a straightforward check. But when officers rolled up, they saw the lights on. That's what Officer Harker told me over the radio. Looks normal here, he'd said, a little out of breath. House is lit. No movement. We're knocking now. And then, just like that, his transmission cut out. Not static. Not the kind of interference we sometimes got in the county's dead spots. Just nothing. It was 42 minutes before we heard from him again. And by then, his voice had this odd distance to it, like he was telling me something he couldn't quite believe himself. I'll never forget what he said. Power's back. Place is clean. No sign of anyone living here in decades. I remember staring at the CAD screen, the incident file still open. The original caller had given his name as Robert Clay, said he'd lived there 15 years. His voice had been shaking when he described the dark outside, like he was holding the phone too close, trying to block the silence in the room. And now Harker was telling me the wallpaper was peeling. Floorboards warped from years of neglect. Dust thick enough to choke on. I asked him to double-check the address. He did. 3 times. Same house. The hiss on the line now was growing sharper, almost like someone dragging a finger across the edge of a microphone. I found myself leaning closer to the headset, my pulse in my throat. Robert, I tried. No response. I caught myself holding my breath, straining for anything. A sigh, a whisper, a scrape of a shoe. And then, there was a sound. So soft I almost thought I'd imagined it. It wasn't a voice. Not really. It was more like movement. But not the kind you hear in houses. No shuffling of feet. No creak of wood. This was smoother. Like something shifting through space without touching it. I felt my stomach knot. If you can hear me, say something, I said. My voice came out tighter than I intended. Still nothing. The hiss began to fade, but it didn't cut out all at once. It ebbed in a way that felt deliberate, almost like someone slowly lowering a dimmer switch until there was no sound at all. And then the line clicked. Later, after my shift, I sat in the break room staring at my phone. The call was still in the log, time-stamped, recorded. I played it back, half hoping it would be silent, half praying it wouldn't. The playback was worse. On the recording, that hiss wasn't just noise. It had layers. A low, almost inaudible thrum underneath. A faint rhythmic pattern that reminded me of breathing, but not human breathing. Too steady, too precise. In the very last second, before the line cut, there was a sound I hadn't caught live. It was a voice. Not loud, not clear, but it said my name. When I got home that morning, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the room felt heavier. Every gap between the curtains seemed too wide. I kept thinking about the officers walking into that house, how they'd found dust on the counters, cobwebs in the corners, a calendar on the wall from 1997, how none of the light switches worked. The only illumination they'd seen was from a single lamp in the front room, flickering dim yellow. The same room the man said he was in. The same spot where he'd said the shadow stood between him and the door. That lamp was still there when they left. Unplugged. I never heard from Robert Clay again. In fact, as far as records show, no one by that name has ever lived at that address. But sometimes, on a night shift, county line pops back up on my board. No voice, just that hiss. And when it does, I can't shake the feeling that the shadow didn't disappear when the power came back. It just found somewhere else to wait, that I wasn't supposed to be in that storage room. Technically, it wasn't forbidden or anything, but there's this unspoken thing in dispatch. You don't go back there unless you're told to. It's where the old records live. Boxes stacked on metal shelves, some so dusty you'd think they hadn't been touched since the building opened. I'd only been on the job for 3 weeks, still the new guy, still being told where the good coffee creamer was and which chair had the least squeaky wheels. It was the middle of the night, dead quiet in the call room. No phones ringing, no radios crackling. Just that weird fluorescent hum in the ceiling. I went looking for printer paper. That was my excuse, and somehow ended up in the back hallway, where the light gets dimmer the further you walk. The storage room door was ajar. I don't know why I pushed it open. Maybe because it was cold back there, and the chill kind of pulled me in. Inside, the air was heavy, like breathing through a filter of dust. My eyes adjusted and I saw the shelves. Rows and rows of cardboard boxes. Some were labeled with years, some with codes I didn't understand. And then there was one sitting by itself. Not on a shelf, not stacked with the others. Just on the floor, right in the middle of the room, like it had been dropped there. No tape sealing it. No label. Just a plain brown box, edges soft with age. I should have left it. But you know how it is when something's sitting there, almost like it's waiting for you. You can't just ignore it. I crouched down, pulled the flaps open. Inside, cassette tapes. Not CDs. Not flash drives. Cassette tapes. The kind you have to flip over halfway through. There were maybe 30 of them, all lined up without cases, just naked black plastic, the reels inside clouded with dust. Each one had a white sticker on the side with a handwritten number. No dates. No names. No notes. Just numbers. I picked one at random, 17, and held it up to the light. That's when I realized something. These weren't normal department recordings. Our archive calls are usually on digital backups, clean and labeled by incident number. But these looked old. Like too old. I don't know what made me take it back to my desk. Curiosity, I guess. That, and the fact I'd seen a tape player in the break room a few days before, shoved into a cupboard no one uses anymore. So, I popped 17 in. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not dead silence. You could hear that faint static hiss, like the sound of air in a big, empty room. Then a voice. 911. What's your emergency? It wasn't me. It wasn't anyone I recognized. The voice sounded older, maybe a woman in her 40s, calm and steady. The kind of voice you trust immediately. Then, after a beat, a man's voice. Shaky, breathing too fast. I don't know if this is... I think someone's in my house. The dispatcher asked for his address. He hesitated, long enough for it to be weird. Then he said, You won't find it. The way he said it, slow, almost apologetic, made my skin crawl. The dispatcher asked him to explain. He said, I can hear them in the other room. They're walking in circles. But I don't have any other rooms. I froze. The dispatcher didn't react, just kept asking standard questions. The man kept speaking in these little bursts, like he had to swallow between every few words. They keep knocking, but not on the door, on the walls, like they're feeling for a way in. There was a sound then, faint, muffled, a dull thud, followed by something like a fingernail dragging across wood. The dispatcher's tone never changed. Sir, can you get outside? No, the man said, almost laughing. It's cold out there. Something about the way he said cold made me stop breathing for a second. The call went on for another minute, the noises getting louder. Then a sharp pop of static, and the tape clicked off. That was it. I sat there for a long time, staring at the player, the wheels still spinning down. It didn't sound like any call I'd ever heard. And it wasn't in our system. I checked. Every call is logged, even the prank ones. But this one, it was like it didn't exist. I should have put the tape back in the box. Should have shoved the whole thing back in storage and pretended I never saw it. Instead, I grabbed another one. 04. The click of the play button felt louder this time. Static. Then the same woman's voice. 911. What's your emergency? This time it was a little girl. No more than 7 or 8. I can't find my mom. The dispatcher asked where she was. She was in the basement, the girl said, but she's not there anymore. I think she went with the man in the floor. The man in the floor. The dispatcher kept her calm voice, asking her to describe him. He's flat, like a shadow, but he talks. He told her to come see where he lives. My stomach turned. The girl started to cry softly. Then she whispered something so quiet I had to lean closer to the speaker. He's knocking now. He says if I open the door, I can come too. Another sound came through, slow, deliberate knocks. 4 of them. Then silence. The tape stopped. I didn't breathe for a long time. I sat there alone in the break room, with this heavy feeling crawling up my spine, like I was being listened to. I know how that sounds, but I swear the quiet in the room didn't feel like normal quiet anymore. I looked at the box sitting on the counter. The other tapes were still inside, waiting. I told myself I'd listen to one more and then stop. Just one more. This one was labeled 29. The voice on the other end was different this time. Not the woman. It was a man's voice answering, deeper, slower. 911. What's your emergency? A long pause. Then my own voice. At least, it sounded like me. I think something's wrong with my recording. The dispatcher asked what I meant. It keeps playing things I haven't said yet. I felt my stomach drop. The voice, my voice, kept going, and I think it's not just the tapes. Then there was a sound. Not static. Not knocking. It was breathing. Very close. Too close. The tape ended. I couldn't move for a while after that. My skin felt cold, my hands clammy on the table. When I finally stood up, I pushed the box away from me like it might bite. But here's the thing. When I went back the next night to put it away, it wasn't there. The middle of the storage room was empty. I checked every shelf, every corner. Nothing. I told myself it was probably logged somewhere else, maybe moved to archives downtown. That's what I wanted to believe. But sometimes in the middle of the night, when the phones are quiet and the only sound is the hum of the lights, I swear I hear it, that faint hiss of static, like something still playing. And sometimes I think it's waiting for me to listen again, that I don't know why I went back to the storage room. It wasn't on my to-do list. I'd already finished my shift the night before with the box sitting in the corner of my apartment, untouched, just where I'd left it. I told myself I'd dig into it over the weekend, maybe. But all through the day, while I was taking calls, my eyes kept flicking toward the clock. The thought of those cassette tapes wouldn't leave me alone. Not curiosity exactly, more like a weight. Like something unfinished. When my shift ended, I didn't even bother going home first. I walked straight to the storage room again, even though I didn't need to. The key still felt warm in my palm when I slid it into the lock. The smell hit me the same way as before, that stale, almost metallic scent that reminded me of an attic after a storm. My flashlight beam swam over shelves stacked with boxes, the faint layer of dust turning the air hazy. And there was again, the unmarked box. I'd already taken it home, but now I wanted to check the room itself to see if maybe there had been another box like it. Some logical reason it had been left behind. But the space it had occupied was bare, the dust disturbed in a neat square where I'd pulled it out. I closed the door and went back to my place. The box was sitting on my kitchen table, exactly where I'd left it. 10 cassette tapes inside, their plastic cloudy with age. No labels, no dates, no case numbers. Just a roll of brittle masking tape holding the flaps of the box together, long since peeled away. I pulled out my old tape player from a drawer, a bulky thing my dad used to use for interviews. I hadn't touched it in years, but it still worked. I sat down, pushed the first tape into the player, and hit play. The hiss came first, the soft static of magnetic tape that had been sitting too long. Then, a man's voice. 911, what's your emergency? Not me. Not anyone I recognized. His tone was clipped, brisk, probably a dispatcher from 20 years ago. Then came the caller. A woman. Her voice was tight, shaking. There's someone in my backyard. The dispatcher asked for her address. She gave it quickly, almost too quickly. I knew that street. A quiet suburban loop on the far edge of town. What are they doing? He asked. They're just standing there. A pause. No, wait. He's closer now. He's smiling at me. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, asking if she could get to a safe room. She kept whispering that the man was walking toward her window, still smiling, not saying a word. The call ended abruptly. No resolution. No sound of police arriving. Just the click of the line cutting. I rewound the tape and listened again, trying to catch any background noise. I thought I heard faint crunching, footsteps on gravel, right before the call ended. When I stopped the player, I realized my hand was sweating. That's when I checked the address she gave. It didn't come up in our system. Not as an old incident. Not as a resolved case. Nothing. It was like the call had never been logged at all. I played the second tape. This one was shorter. A child's voice, maybe a boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. There's a man in my house. The dispatcher on this one sounded different, younger. Are your parents home? The boy didn't answer that. He just kept repeating, he's in the hallway. The dispatcher asked what the man looked like. The boy said something I almost didn't catch, his voice small. He's wearing my dad's face. There was silence after that. Just breathing. Then the line went dead. I froze. My finger hovered over the stop button, but I didn't press it. I rewound again, making sure I'd heard right. I had. I checked that address too. Nothing. No report. No visit logged. No mention in any archive. Tape 3. A man this time. His voice was urgent, but weirdly flat, like he was trying not to panic. There's someone knocking on my door, but it's not right. The sound's coming from inside the door. The dispatcher didn't seem to understand. He asked if the man meant someone was in the house. No. They're in the door. Inside it. The woods breathing. Then a faint, wet sound, like a slow exhale. And the man whispered, "It's looking at me." The click came again. Every tape was like that. Different voices, different fears, different impossibilities. One woman claimed she could see her own body lying in the driveway. Another man said his wife's voice was coming from under the kitchen floor, even though she was sitting right next to him. Someone else reported lights flickering in patterns that spelled out their name. And every single one ended before help arrived. None of them were in the system. By the time I'd gone through all 10, my head was pounding. My little apartment felt smaller, the air heavier. I could hear my own breathing over the low hum of the refrigerator. I sat there for a long time, the tapes scattered around me, the machine still warm. I thought about telling someone at the station. But the thing is, you don't just bring something like this up. I was new, a rookie. You get labeled as the weird one fast in this job if you start talking about ghosts or whatever this was. Still, I couldn't just ignore it. So I started digging. I spent the next week running the addresses again, searching old records, even cross-checking with newspaper archives. Most didn't exist anymore. Some streets had been renamed, others developed into entirely new neighborhoods. A few didn't appear on any map I could find, not even old ones. It was like they'd been erased. I barely slept that week. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing the voices from the tapes. The woman whispering about the man, smiling at her window. The boy talking about his father's face. The wet, slow breath in the wood. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I heard knocking. Once I swore I heard a voice on the other side of my bedroom wall. My apartment only has one wall that faces the outside. The other shared with the unit next door, and it's been empty for months. I kept telling myself it was just in my head. That's what I wanted to believe. But then, 2 nights ago, I got a call during my shift. 911, what's your emergency? I asked, going through the motions. The line hissed for a moment. Then a voice I knew. I can see you. I froze. It was the boy from the tape. Who is this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no answer, just soft breathing. You need to tell me where you are. The boy whispered, you're wearing my dad's face. The line cut. I sat there, headset still on, unable to move. My hand was shaking so badly, I had to put them in my lap. I checked the system for an incoming number. Nothing. It didn't even register as a call. Like it hadn't happened. I went home after my shift, but I didn't sleep. I sat on my kitchen table again, staring at the box. The tapes were still there, waiting. Part of me wants to destroy them. Part of me thinks they were never really mine to begin with. But the worst part? Sometimes, when I walk into my apartment now, I could swear the box is closer to the door than I remember leaving it, that I didn't sleep the night after I found the first few tapes. I tried, but every time I shut my eyes, I kept hearing that woman's voice from the second cassette. The way she kept whispering for someone to turn the light back on, like she wasn't talking to me at all, but to someone else in the room with her. The next morning, I came in early. I told myself it was because I wanted to finish cataloging the box for the archive, but that was a lie. I wanted answers. I wanted to know who these people were. I pulled the box onto my desk again, coughing at the dust that rose up like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. My hand shook a little as I dug past the cassettes I'd already heard, pulling out the next one. No label, just like the rest. The same gray plastic, the same faint smell of mildew, and something else, something like old pennies. We still had one working cassette player in the whole building, some beat-up thing in the back room, used for evidence transfers. I plugged it in, closed the door, and slid the tape in. It started with the usual click, and then a deep breath. A man's voice this time, low, rough, and shaking. My name is Daniel Price. I think someone's in my house. I can hear them in the hallway. I froze. Daniel Price. That name. I'd seen it somewhere before. They've been here for hours, the man said, his breathing picking up. I keep calling out, but they won't answer. I can't see them. I can't even hear footsteps now, but I know they're here. He paused for a long time before saying, almost in a whisper, I think they're in the walls. I reached for the little notepad I kept next to me. I wrote his name down, every detail, just like I'd done with the others. The call went on for about 4 minutes. He kept saying the same thing, that whoever was there was moving around him, circling him without a sound. His voice broke toward the end. I'm going to open the door now. If I don't call back. The tape cut off mid-breath. I just sat there for a while, staring at the spinning reels. I didn't know if I should keep going, but something in me said I had to. I dug out the next tape. Another voice. Another name. And then another. And another. Every one of them had the same pattern. An emergency, a moment of raw fear, and then a sudden cut to silence. By the 5th tape, I knew for sure. These weren't random calls. These were all names I'd heard before. I pulled up the county's cold case database, something we had access to, but rarely used. I typed in Daniel Price. There he was, missing since 1998. Last seen leaving his job at a hardware store. His wife told police she'd heard him calling 911 that night, but no such call was ever found in the records. Next name, Hannah Baird. Missing since 2004. Disappeared after telling her roommate she'd be right back. Her voice was on the 4th tape. By the time I'd cross-checked 10 names, my stomach was in knots. Every single voice belonged to someone who'd gone missing in this county. Not just missing, but gone. No bodies found. No clues. Just cold files gathering dust. I pushed the chair back and paced the room, my head buzzing. How is this possible? These calls never existed in the system. I'd searched for them. There was no record of them being logged, no timestamps, nothing. But the voices were real, and they were scared. I went back to the box. My fingers brushed the bottom, and I realized there were more tapes underneath, smaller ones, mini cassettes, the kind used in old handheld recorders. No dates, no labels. I picked one up. My hand felt weirdly cold holding it, like it had just come out of a freezer. The player didn't fit these smaller tapes, so I had to dig up an old dictation machine from the evidence closet. The batteries inside were crusted over and dead, but I found a spare pack in the supply drawer. I popped the tape in and hit play. This one didn't start with a 911 greeting. It started with breathing, long, slow, careful breathing. Then a man's voice said quietly, "You can hear me, can't you?" I froze. It wasn't fear in his tone. It was curiosity. "If you're hearing this, you found the others," he said. "Don't call them in. Don't put them in the log. They'll know if you do." My hand hovered over the stop button, but I couldn't press it. "You think these are just old calls," he continued, "but they're not. They're still happening. Every time you play them, you're letting them through." My throat went dry. "You'll start to notice them. In the hall. In your car. Behind you when you're locking the door. Just don't answer if they speak your name." The tape clicked off. I sat there, heart pounding, staring at the little machine. This wasn't a call from a missing person. This was a warning. I shoved the mini cassette back into the box and closed the lid hard. For the rest of my shift, I couldn't focus. Every creak of the building made me flinch. I kept catching myself glancing toward the doorway, half expecting someone to be standing there. When the shift finally ended, I carried the box out to my car. I told myself I was taking it home to keep working on it in private, but deep down, I knew I just didn't want to leave it here where anyone else could listen. That night, I spread the tapes out across my kitchen table. I couldn't believe how many there were. At least 50, maybe more. Each one was like a little coffin, holding the last moments of someone's life. I played another. A young boy this time. Maybe 9 or 10. "There's a man in the yard," he whispered. "He's not moving, but he's looking at my window." I close my eyes, try not to picture it. He's smiling now. His mouth is too big. His teeth are. The boy's voice broke into a sob. And then silence. I checked the database again. The name matched another cold case. The boy had vanished from his bedroom one summer night in 1995. My skin crawled. This wasn't just some creepy coincidence. Someone, something, had been taking people for decades. And these tapes were the only proof it had ever happened. I don't know how long I sat there listening. The voices blurred together after a while, different people, different years, all ending the same way. And then I heard one that made my blood run cold. It was a woman's voice. Soft, almost shaky. "Hello, is this 911? I knew that voice. Not from the case files. Not from work. It was my mother. "I don't know what's happening," she said. "The lights keep going out, and there's someone outside the bedroom door. Please." The call cut off. I felt my stomach twist into a knot so tight I could barely breathe. My mother had died in a car accident when I was a kid. At least, that's what I'd been told. But this was a recording from years before I'd even started here. And her voice, she sounded like she knew she wasn't going to make it out. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the player. I didn't sleep at all after that. I kept replaying the call, tried to convince myself I was wrong, that it was just someone who sounded like her. But the more I listened, the more certain I became. It was her, and she had been afraid. The next morning, I went back into the cold case database and searched her name. Nothing. No missing person record. No police report. Just a car accident file from 2002. If what I'd heard was real, then someone had lied. And if they'd lied about her, what else had they lied about? The box of tapes sat on the passenger seat beside me as I drove to work, every bump in the road making them rattle faintly inside. I couldn't stop thinking about what the man on the mini cassette had said. "They'll know if you do." Who was they? And why did I feel like I was already on their list? I didn't want to open the box again. For 2 nights, I'd left it under the desk in my apartment, shoving it far enough back that I could almost forget it was there. But I couldn't forget. I could feel it in the room with me, like a quiet weight. A smell of old paper and dust, and something faintly sour that seemed to bleed out from the cardboard itself. I told myself I'd stop after the 3rd tape. I told myself that hearing the voices of missing people was bad enough, that going further wasn't my job. But that wasn't true, was it? I'd already crossed the line. It was the night shift again, slow as always. One operator on calls, me handling the logs. The room felt larger when it was empty like that. Every tap of the keyboard seemed to echo too far. My partner was in the break room, the TV muffled behind the wall. The clock read 2:17 a.m. I found myself staring at the door to storage. The key was still in my pocket. Before I knew it, I was in there again, pulling the box down from the shelf. My hand shook more than I wanted to admit. The dust on the flaps clung to my fingertips. The smell hit me again. Old air sealed in for decades, thick and stale. Inside, there were only a few tapes left. 3, maybe 4. I ran my hand over them, the plastic cold. The first 2 I listened to that night were bad. Not in the same way as before. Worse. There was a woman sobbing so hard she couldn't get the words out. Just gasps and the occasional, strangled pleas. Another was a man's voice, calm, too calm, describing something outside his house. "It's closer now," he kept saying. "It's closer." He never said what it was. I almost stopped there. Almost. But my eyes kept drifting back to the bottom of the box. To the last tape. It was unlabeled like the rest, but this one looked different. The edges of the plastic were chipped, and the clear window over the reels was cracked like spiderweb glass. The tape inside looked warped, brittle. When I picked it up, I felt something, not a shock, not static, more like a faint thrum against my skin, like holding a live animal and feeling its heartbeat. I told myself it was just the nerves. I told myself I'd check it, log it, and be done. The player clicked as I slid it in. The reels resisted for a second before catching, the tape pulling tight. My breath felt heavier. My stomach was twisting. I hadn't even hit play yet. When I finally did, there was nothing for a moment but hiss. Then breathing. Close. Too close. I leaned toward the speaker without realizing it. The breathing was uneven, shaky, almost like whoever had been running. Then a voice. My voice. Dispatch, this is... It cut off like the person on the other end, me, had stopped mid-sentence. I swallowed hard, staring at the player. The voice came again. Still mine. Still wrong. I need help, it said. Not calm. Not like the way we're trained to sound. My voice was panicked, breaking. I don't know where I am. I can't see anything. It's dark. Too dark. I froze. I knew every call I'd ever made. I knew the sound of my own voice in every scenario. But I'd never said those words in my life. On the tape, whatever it was, kept talking. They said they'd be back. But I don't think they're coming. I hear something. It's moving closer. I felt my throat tighten. The hiss of the tape filled the silence between words. Please, the voice said again, my voice. If someone finds this, tell them I didn't want to go. The tape stuttered, warbled. The reel squealed for half a second, and the sound warped into a long, distorted groan. Then, wait, my voice snapped in, fast, sharp, desperate. Don't. Click. It stopped. No fade out. No end tone. Just gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the player. My pulse was pounding in my ears. My mouth had gone dry. I replayed it. Twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. The fear in the voice didn't change. I knew what I had to do. In the back office, there's a locked drawer with incident archives. I'd never been in there before, but I knew the supervisor's desk key would fit. I told myself I was looking for proof, something to explain it. The logs are handwritten before they're scanned in. I flipped through years of them, going back decades. The handwriting changed, the paper yellowed. No record. No call like that. No incident like that. By the time I looked up, my hands were stiff from gripping the pages. I put the logs back and just sat there in the dark office. My mind kept looping. If that voice was mine, then it hadn't happened yet. Which meant it could. Which meant whatever was on that tape was waiting for me somewhere down the line. The rest of the shift, I couldn't shake it. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped. Every time there was silence, I felt that faint thrum again, the same one I felt when I picked up the tape. I took it home. I don't know why. It's in my bag right now, wrapped in a towel, like that could somehow stop it from, I don't know, leaking into the air around it. I've thought about destroying it, smashing it, burning it. But here's the thing. If the voice on that tape really is me, then maybe it's a warning. And if it's a warning, maybe destroying it means I lose the only chance to prepare. The only problem is, how do you prepare for something you can't understand? For a night you haven't lived yet? I keep thinking about the last thing it said. Not the words. The way they sounded. The way the fear was layered under something else, something worse. Resignation. I've been at this job for 6 months now. I've taken hundreds of calls. Most I forget. Some stick with me. But this one's different. Because I'm starting to hear it when I'm not near the tape. That voice. My voice. Whispering in the back of my head when the lights are low, when I'm alone in the dispatch room. Sometimes I catch pieces, fragments I don't remember from the recording. It's getting harder to tell which ones I've heard on the tape and which ones are new. Last night, lying in bed, I swear I heard myself say, "They're already here.